Okay, it looks like we're ready to go, and it looks like we have a great turnout. Thanks for joining us, and good morning, everyone. We're here today for technical meeting number 4 in Docket 220807, Innovative Energy Solutions Program Cycle 1, for which the theme is Demand Side Management. My name is Jan Beecher. I'm a commissioner at PURA and the presiding officer assigned to this docket. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Vice Chairman Arconti and Commissioners Smith and Cheeseman. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the innovators' final reports regarding their completed projects, including each completed project's performance and lessons learned, the United Illuminating Company's final report, including the successes and lessons learned from its collaboration with the completed projects, and the program administrator's final report, as well as discuss any additional topics such as process improvements regarding the IES program implementation and anything else as deemed necessary by the authority. So before we begin, before we proceed, I'll highlight a few housekeeping matters. This technical meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. We also have a court reporter with us today who will transcribe the official record of this proceeding. To ensure its accuracy, please speak one at a time. Refrain from using the chat function. I think we've disabled it for the duration. And do remember that nonverbal responses such as nodding will not be captured for the record. Throughout the hearing, feel free to use the raise hand function, which is located at the bottom of the screen in the React tab. Remember to unmute your microphone and state your name and role for the record before you speak. At today's technical meeting, we will hear project reports from three projects, Grid Edge, SGS, and Tantalus, as well as final reports on these projects from the EDCs and program administrator, and we'll have a discussion of lessons learned from Eversource, from the Current Energy Group, and also additional comments are going to be welcome from the Innovation Advisory Council members today as well. We expect the meeting to run about 2.5 hours to 12:30. You see that on the agenda. And we'll address any docket scheduling issues and outstanding administrative matters before we conclude for the day. So now I'm very happy to turn this meeting over to Mr. Timothy White and Ms. Molly Charles, who are the lead PURA technical staff members who have worked tirelessly on this docket. And we really want to acknowledge their hard work across these many interesting projects. Mr. White will go over the details of today's agenda, and he'll introduce each project in turn. And I know we have presentations, and thank you for sending those along. We have different ways of either uploading those for you, or you can upload them. So Tim will sort of play that by ear as you introduce each project. So take it away, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Beecher. Today's tech meeting will begin with Grid Edge, followed by Smarter Grid Solutions, and finally Tantalus. Each innovator has been given 15 minutes to present on their projects with Q&A to follow. After each innovator presents, both United Illuminating and the program administrator will present on the project, with each presentation followed by Q&A. Finally, we'll hear from both Eversource and the program administrator about lessons learned following the IES program's first cycle. And of course, UI is also welcome to provide feedback on lessons learned in relation to the IES program. With that, we can start with Grid Edge.
Thank you, Mr. White. Do you have my slides, or should I share my screen?
I think you're good there.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nachum Sadan, and I'm the founder and CEO of Grid Edge Networks. Thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of Grid Edge a summary of our IES Cycle 1 project titled EV Fleet Integration Using Vehicle-to-Grid Technology. Before I start, I'd like to thank PURA for selecting Grid Edge to be one of the first 7 innovator companies of Cycle 1 of the Innovation Energy Solutions Program. I would also like to thank the IES admin team for managing the program and providing guidance and support. Special thanks go to Michael Crowley and the UI team for their incredible cooperation and support throughout this project. and to ACES, a private school bus operator that partnered with us by giving access to their charger and electric school bus. A word about ACES. ACES is a very special school bus service provider. They transport students with disabilities and special needs, and the project site is located in North Haven in an underserved community area. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, that's good. I would like to take a minute to give you a quick overview of Grid Edge Networks. We are a Massachusetts technology company with a mission to advance clean energy and transportation electrification by addressing the grid interconnection challenge using innovative, flexible interconnection technology solutions. Our work has been recognized and funded by grants from NYSERDA, Mass Clean Energy Center, and your own Connecticut IES program. Grid Edge is not a newcomer to grid interconnection. We have been making contributions to the IEEE 1547 interconnection standard for over 10 years and have field deployments of our DGP product with multiple utilities and over 80 substation installations. This project used the DERCOM technology product. Next slide, please. The DERCOM product was developed and field tested jointly with Avangrid and received 2 grants from NYSERDA. The first grant was to develop the base platform for flexible interconnection of DER, primarily for solar PV. The second grant was to extend the platform's capabilities, developing new software to support energy storage and EV charging use cases. DERCOM has been field tested in Connecticut and New York at 2 different solar sites and is being tested this year in New York with energy storage and EV charging. And then, of course, there is the V2G integration project, which is our topic today. Next slide, please. So what is DERCOM? It is a utility-managed flexible interconnection platform representing a new class of a local system that can be defined as substation DERMS. It is a turnkey system that includes a substation controller named DDERM, edge devices named EDERM, and integrated secured communications. It comes with full DER integration at the edge, supports multiple DER types, and exposes a single SCADA interface to a utility management system. It can run with or without centralized DERMS. The brain of the system are the closed-loop control algorithms that run on the DDERM in the substation and continuously monitor and control all DER assets that are attached to it. DERCOM also acts as a middle layer between the utility and the customer DER, providing a buffer and enhanced cybersecurity protection. DERCOM uses IEEE 1547 communication standards for interoperability and ease of integration. Next slide, please. So this project resulted in 2 major innovations that I would like to highlight today. The first is demonstration of local control of V2G. The best way to evaluate progress is to compare the start state of the project with the end state. When we started, we found a setup here on the left that uses proprietary charging management software over an internet cloud connection. This configuration used 2 cellular communication paths, one to the charger and another to the bus telematics. The bus initiated the charging session while the charger was passive. Grid Edge replaced this with a simple local scheme, bringing the charging management function closer to the edge and enabling bidirectional power under full control of the charger and supporting multiple bus types. This table summarizes the innovation changes which make this project the first V2G pilot of its kind using this method. Local control versus cloud-based telematics providing a simpler, more reliable, and lower-cost solution to the customer. Open standards versus proprietary software, resulting in interoperability and no vendor lock. Distributed control versus centralized. Moving intelligence to the edge improves resiliency and cybersecurity. So the question is, what are the benefits to the customer? What are the benefits to ASUS? Not being dependent on a proprietary vendor and having a V2G-enabled charger. Next slide, please. So the second innovation is demonstrating local flexible charging and discharging under control from the substation DERMS. The Edge DERM, EDERM, provides the local V2G control that I showed you in the previous slide. And the substation DERM, the DDERM, provides local utility control. So again, let's compare the start state with the end state. At the beginning of the project, ASUS did not have an interconnection agreement, and there was no clear path to V2G, since the charger and the bus were not enabled for V2G. Obviously, this bus and charger were never tested as a pair for V2G, although they were sold to ASUS as V2G capable. Our IES project enabled the grid interconnection of the charger, supporting ASUS in executing a DER interconnection agreement with UI, and implementing a new scheme that limited export to match local load. The details are in the final report for those interested in a deeper dive. We also upgraded the hardware and software of the charger to make it V2G enabled. What is innovative in this approach, again, being the first V2G pilot using this method, is bringing side flexibility closer to the edge. The use of a standard SCADA interface at the substation enables the utility to send schedules and demand dispatch signals on a secure channel and real-time response to grid constraints. What we demonstrated were charger reactions to simulated grid constraints and setting of charging and discharging schedules. Next slide, please. So here are photos of the three bus models that we tested with, Bluebird, Microbird, and BYD Ride. Picture on the left shows the ASUS Bluebird bus in the back and the Microbird bus in the front. Picture on the right shows, again, the ASUS Bluebird bus in the back and the BYD Ride bus on the left or in the front of it. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of the lessons learned taken from the project final report that contains more details. We encountered two main challenges. Co-location of solar PV with the V2G charger and system integration with the legacy equipment and proprietary software protocols. The problem has been exacerbated by lack of documentation and no clear way of initiating a V2G sequence. The interoperability challenges we faced were between the bus and the charger, and also between the charger and the management software. And we resolved both. Other lessons learned: on the bright side, DERCOM performed as designed, with fast response time and no communication loss between the substation and site, improving the efficiency of the local algorithms. Another lesson is the bus battery size. We heard from the bus drivers their range anxiety with a 60 kW battery. It is also too small for meaningful grid support. As far as project highlights, the ability to react to unexpected conditions and come up with creative solutions has been a key takeaway. Comparing this IES project to others, we had to develop new software and make hardware design changes on the fly to address unknowns. It was a real R&D experience, while other projects had mostly operational challenges using products and technologies that were proven elsewhere, especially the differences with the SaaS projects. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. This is a summary of recommendations section taken from the final report. Starting with scalability. In order to scale V2G, we recommend considering financial incentives that are specific to V2G deployments and go beyond participation in the ESS program. We recommend mandating the use of standard protocols in order to achieve interoperability between various types of chargers and electric buses. We also recommend prioritizing the use of larger batteries with a minimum battery size of 150 kW. Our IES recommendations are to use separate tracks and evaluation criteria for SaaS projects versus infrastructure projects. For our project, the metric of how many customers we've signed up for the service was not applicable. We had only one customer, ASUS. We clearly could not do well with an evaluation form that was designed for SaaS products. We recommend a 24-month track for non-SaaS projects, since this is exactly what happened here in cycle 1. The 4 out of 7 companies that finished their projects on time within the 18 months were all SaaS projects, while the remaining 3 infrastructure projects are presenting to you today. We all needed extra time. Our peer recommendations include creating a financial incentive specific to V2G projects and resolving the co-location challenge of V2G with solar. We recommend running more V2G pilots in the state with both EDCs to test more types of chargers with various ESBs and other EV fleet types, with various matching pairs until the new bidirectional standards get adopted by the industry. So I was asked about my vision, how long would that take? And my estimate is 3 years before Pura can consider V2G scalability in the state. I would like to take a moment to touch on one question regarding the IES program. Realizing there are different opinions within Pura and the EDCs who question whether Pura should be in the business of running an innovation program. That is not a good use of taxpayers' money and not in their best interest. That this should be better left to the venture capitalists. While I respect this point of view, I would like to offer another perspective. There's no one better than Pura to run this program. VCs are biased to invest in technologies that yield quick return on investment and are not aligned with the public interest. Only Pura represents the ratepayer, and Pura's investment in IES is very measurable and effective. When one of these new technologies ends up saving tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money, it is a good investment. My V2G project received $500,000, and I'm very grateful for it. We went over budget by another $200,000. It was covered by GridEdge. By any measure, it was a successful investment that will yield future savings to the state of Connecticut and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sedan. And I think your last slide and last comments were very interesting and very, very relevant to me. And so it sounds like you are very focused on assessing the net benefits of the technologies across timescales and adoption. I think I heard you correctly on that, right? That you're really focusing attention on that, on producing the benefit.
Yes, Chairman Beecher. I mentioned in my final report, and as well as within my comments today, that in my view, the V2G technology or the V2G industry is not mature enough to scale at this moment. However, the industry is making progress by adopting a bidirectional standard that has already been approved, and it's just a matter of 2 to 3 years of adoption when we're going to start seeing electric school buses and other EV types using this new standard, as well as chargers who will be using this new standard. With the new standard, many of these problems that are, I would say, symptomatic or common to a pre-standard environment with vendors using proprietary solutions and affecting interoperability, all these issues hopefully will go away in 3 years. I propose to continue testing with the existing while the industry is going through the adoption of with the new standard. I propose to continue testing um, to acquire more lessons learned and then use them to affect the processes. I mean, other than the technology, there's more work to do with the regulation and processes and um, work orders and so on that utilities and customers alike will have to change in order to adopt this new technology.
Okay, thank you. And one last quick question. Is Grid Edge actively involved with the standards development community?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We
All
have
right,
been.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Commissioner Cheeseman.
Thank you, Commissioner Beecher. Thank you for your presentation today. I think on the next to last slide, you indicate that lack of documentation was an issue. Could you please be more specific what you mean by lack of documentation?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Cheeseman. And the details are in the final report, so I would just mention that we had to deal with a charger that became orphaned because the manufacturer of the charger decided to get out of this business. And this is another sort of symptom of an industry that is not mature enough with, companies getting out of business um, or abandoning the product altogether. So we didn't have any engineering documentation to assist us in doing the system integration. We had to do reverse engineering and a lot of trial and error in order to make progress.
So basically, they left you with no instruction manual.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you. That I can understand that would be challenging. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner B.
Any other questions from commissioners at this point? And of course, you can jump in at any time. If not, I'll hand it over to Mr. White.
Thank you, Commissioner Beecher. So I just want to, I may have missed this and I apologize if I did. I just want to clarify on this. You were talking about the standards. As I understand it, it's ISO 15118-20 is the meaningful one that you're talking about. Has that, so that is between, that's between the EV industry and the utility industry. It's a collaborative effort between the two of them to come up with a standard.
So let me clarify, if I may, Mr. White. The 15118-20, which is the new standard, is between the bus or the vehicle and the charger. And this is entirely the preview of the auto industry.
The auto industry.
The
So
auto industry. So we have here, this is very interesting. We have two large industries, the auto industry and the power industry, so coming together, and they need to homogenize their standards. So the standard on the utility side or power side is the IEEE 1547, of course, which is the interconnection between the charger and the grid. So the charger is sort of in the middle.
Okay.
Right? So the charger has to meet 1547 or UL 1741. And this is between the grid and the charger. And between the charger and the vehicle, that's entirely the automobile industry. And that's the 15118-20.
Okay. So I guess just trying to keep it relatively short. Are the two different industries on board with these two standards and the understanding that when the standards are created,
Yes, they are, Mr. White.
the discharge is going to work?
Yes. So
Okay.
I attend a task force that was created by IEEE 1547 for
Okay.
V2G, and we have members from Honda and Ford and other automobile manufacturers who attend these meetings regularly. So yes, we are aligned, or we're trying, but
Okay.
it takes time. These are two very large industries that do not move so quickly.
Understood. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
with regard to the time frame you were talking about, the 3 years, is that what is that? Is that getting the two agreed on something, or that is like when you could have rapid fire deployment because
Yeah.
everything is golden?
Yep. It's the latter.
Okay.
The ISO 15118-20 came out last year, so last April. So uh, there's already an agreement. Now it's a question of
Okay.
adoption. So how long would it take to the EV fleet manufacturers to come out with vehicles that adhere to the new standard? And the same thing with chargers. And I expect that it will take, it's just an estimate. Maybe
Sure.
it will take 2 years, but I just 3 years, I think we should be fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Um, all right. And just to be clear, what you're recommending then in the interim, the next 3 years, is to continue pilots, not just for you, but for the industry at large, because it ends up benefiting the
Yeah.
eventual fast track rollout. Okay.
Well, I tested with only one charger, with 3 buses, but only one charger. And there
Yeah.
are many, and this is a charger that was discontinued. So,
Yeah.
we need to test with Eversource. We need to test, and I'm not just saying grid edge, but in general, we need to do more testing and more learnings in order to be ready for scalability when it comes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I'm okay for right now. I think Molly has a question.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I had a couple questions just on the suggestion to add V2G incentives beyond the incentives provided through the Energy Storage Solutions Program. So you mentioned that this would reduce the total cost of ownership gap between EV and conventional buses. Could you just elaborate a little more on what that gap is? Is there an estimate of sort
Yes.
of what level of incentive would be needed to bring that to parity?
Yes, absolutely, Ms. Charles. So I actually responded to interrogatories, and that was one of the questions. And I included an Excel spreadsheet with a breakdown of my estimates. So I estimated, and this is of course ideal conditions, right? With 155 kW battery, which was the bus that we tested, with I estimated $47,000 in um, savings coming from two revenue streams. One is from exporting power to the grid, and the other is for participation in grid in demand response or demand dispatch programs. And I think, and this is with the existing ESS program, right? I just used existing numbers, but if we can add to it, the net present value calculation over a 12-year lifespan of a bus was about $500,000, which more than covers the cost of a bus, which is about 350 to 400,000. So I think V2G is essential, especially now that we don't have the EPA incentives anymore. In order to incentivize school bus service providers, such as First Student, for example, to continue with the electrification of their fleet, we would need to have some sort of incentives, and they will definitely go to states where those incentives are available.
Thank you, that's helpful. So I understand that it takes into account the current ESS incentive levels. Does it also consider sort of current fuel prices, how that impacts the comparison, or possible enrollment in the medium and heavy duty EV rate that's available now?
So I have not taken into account. I didn't do actually a head-to-head comparison with the conventional fuel-based bus. I just did the calculations for an electric school bus, based on the battery size, based on electric rates, and based on the existing ESS incentives. But I did not do comparison with a traditional bus.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And then when you're proposing additional incentives, would that be through the ESS program?
That's obviously not my prerogative. How to institute that, whether through the ESS program or through another mechanism. I would just like to say this, when we ask, unlike a stationary battery that is used for charging and discharging, when we look at an electric school bus or any EV for that matter, it's more than just a battery on wheels, right? Because we actually ask the owner, operator of that vehicle to park the vehicle at a certain time, not to use it because its main use is transportation, right? So they actually give up on their right to use it as a transportation mechanism and provide it or allow the utility to use it as a as a battery. So I think this goes beyond just the traditional ask of an energy storage system. And I think that deserves to be recognized and incentivized accordingly.
Thank you. Is there any sort of estimate of whether an electric school bus or an electric vehicle could provide any additional grid benefits compared to stationary storage, or is it really just higher incentives are necessary because the vehicle is used as a vehicle?
So I strongly believe that electric school buses can be a great asset. If you take a 155 kW bus and a fleet of 10 buses, that's 1.5 megawatts right there. That's significant by any measure. And especially during the summertime when the buses are idle, and that coincides with heat waves and high demand on the grid system. That's an ideal asset, to be used. I cannot speak for other EV fleet types because I have not tested them, but I strongly believe that we should incentivize, school bus operators and service providers to continue their electrification effort and especially invest in school buses. I mean, New York State has a mandate, right, to replace the entire fleet by 2035 to electric. That's almost 50,000 buses across the state. I know it's a tall order for a state like Connecticut, but I believe you have 6,000 school buses in the state. But it's a significant, again, you do the math, especially during the summer months, it's a significant source. You have batteries sitting, in parking lots that can be used to assist the grid and to avoid, outages, or to avoid engaging, peakers, diesel generators to assist with the additional load.
Thanks. And then just one clarifying question. You mentioned the sort of size issue and range anxiety. What is a typical battery size for an electric school bus? And would participation in vehicle to grid sort of require bus owners to purchase larger capacities than they would otherwise? Or can it be, with the same type of bus that they would purchase in the absence of V2G?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the bus we tested with was delivered in September 21. And it might not sound a long time ago, but technology's changed dramatically. And the new bus, the BYD Ride bus, had 155 kW. That was a 2023 or 2024. It was built in. So I think we're going to see less and less vehicles of I'm referring only to the MHD category, right? That have smaller batteries. right? So I think the industry is going in that direction of larger batteries to increase the range, um, and that also benefits the grid, right? Because we now have a much larger energy storage system that can support the grid. Now, 50, 60 kW may sound a lot to a residential site, but not, unless you have a multitude of them, right? But the other benefit of a fleet is that you have all these buses or all these batteries grouped together as an asset. While, if you're using a VPP with multiple residential customers, it's really challenging to aggregate them.
Thank you. I think that's all my questions for now, so I will turn it back to Commissioner Beecher.
Thank you. I mean, right before I hand it back over to Tim, actually, when you regard the batteries as asset, are there options there in terms of ownership of that asset, and does that have implications for the cost, especially considering tax effects and so on?
Yes, that's a great question, Commissioner Beecher. And I did not get into the ownership question, but that's a great question. Um, my vision is that from the grid perspective, from the utility perspective, they should be agnostic to what type of bus or what type of vehicle. What should concern them, and actually that's what in the grid interconnection agreement, it's just a charger that is being tested and is being certified. So if the charger can support, say, 150 kW, then and a bus comes in with a smaller battery, then it's fine. But if the charger is only 60 kW, like in our project's case, and we brought in a bus that was 155 kW, we can only discharge at 60 because the charger limited, right? The output power. So the chargers will need to match the size of the vehicles, but I think the key component is the charger from the grid's perspective.
When you were describing a fleet of batteries on the ready during the summer that are sitting in school parking lots or whatever, their distribution parking lots, it raises some really interesting questions about partnerships in communities, public-private partnerships, frankly, and possibly leasing arrangements or other arrangements that would sort of maximize the value of the model you're describing. It's very interesting
Absolutely.
area. In addition to the standards area, which is I'm always interested in that as well. All right, I think I see a hand up from Mahdi Ruel Amini. I hope I have that correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry that my long last name gave you a hard time. So, yeah, I had a question for Sedan. I wanted to thank him for the presentation and then ask him. He did mention that the batteries are a 155 kilowatt, but I was wondering what's the battery duration of those school buses? Like for how long can they provide that 155 kW? And also, what's the DOD that we need to consider here, depths of discharge? Do we have access to the whole capacity there inside the batteries of those school buses, or should we consider a DOD for safety or to prolong the life cycle of those batteries? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you, Mahdi. So I'll start with the second question. It really depends on the specs, the specifications of each EV, or in this case, electric school bus vendor. BYD specifies, a lower limit of 20%, so not to discharge lower than 20%. And as far as charging, they go all the way up to 100%. In the case of Microbird, they actually have an upper limit of 80%. So you need to operate between 20% and 80%. So you never discharge the battery fully or In some cases, they request not to charge fully, but it is really dependent on the battery manufacturer and their specifications.
Thank you, Sedan.
You're welcome.
Okay, I see questions from members, I believe, of the IAC. Tim, do you want to go ahead and cover those now or wait until we hear from the industry partner? Or
I mean, I do,
might be related to what we've
yeah,
just talked about.
we've got a hand raise and then maybe
Yeah.
move on after Julia.
Yeah, Julia, would you? I lost the other hand here. I've got too many squares on my game card here. But Julia, you're welcome to ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. Julia Dumaine on behalf of the Innovation Advisory Council. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. Thank you so much for the presentation today. You had discussed the fact that the DIRCOM system can both work with a centralized DERMS or without one. Can you describe what capabilities are enabled by the presence of a centralized DERMS versus with a dispatch platform such as EV Energy or Energy Hub?
Yes, thank you, Julia. So our solution, the DIRCOM system, operates between the substation and the edge. It doesn't have a wide view of the entire grid. We're not a replacement for DERMS. We complement DERMS. So, if a utility does not have a centralized DERM system, they can start using DIRCOM on a substation by substation basis. So if not all the substations are congested or have DER attached to them or EVs, so they can deploy DIRCOM locally at a low cost to get going with interconnection of that project. The benefits of DERMS or any centralized system is that they have a wide view of the entire system, so they can do power flows and they can do schedules across the entire grid system. We don't have that visibility. We only have visibility, as I said, between the substation and the edge. So, please remind me, what was the other question, Julia?
Right. So it was sort of two questions in there, but and also how a centralized DERMS presence compares with the presence of a dispatch platform like EV Energy or Energy
right.
Hub.
Yes, thank you. So I cannot speak to DERMS. I can speak to DIRCOM. So the big difference is if you're using Energy Hub or you're using another system, the way that the utility sends signals to that system is by email. There's no automated way to do that, or by logging in. So actually, this human intervention, a person has to log in and in a schedule, right? I need 5 megawatts of capacity in the next 24 hours. DIRCOM, by exposing a SCADA interface, the utility can go directly into DIRCOM and then set the schedule. And all this can be done automatically, by software. No human intervention, no emails, no prone to people forgetting that they need to do something. So you take the human out of that cycle.
Great. So when you are talking about the 3-year runway, can you just clarify, are you talking about DIRCOM or moving forward from that email-based approach right now?
Oh, so the 3-year is basically in general for the industry to catch up with the new standards and to adopt them.
Great.
DIRCOM is available today, and we can accept schedules from the utility, and we can push them down. We can respond in real time and do all of that today. There's no need to wait.
So I just have one last question, Commissioner, if that's okay. And this ties to the last statement Mr. Sadat made. Could you provide any additional information regarding standardization? Of course, that's mostly industry motivated, but what role can a regulator play in encouraging standardization and interoperability?
Oh, absolutely. I love this question, Julia. It's a huge role. As a regulator, you can mandate the use of a standard. And obviously in conjunction with the EDCs. But when you can request that when a new project submits an application, like it is today, they have to meet UL 1741 SB or SC. While in the past they didn't have to. So, all this changes. In addition to UL 1741 SB, you can request that the EVs and the chargers will meet 1518-20. Today, the standard is -2.
Thank you, Mr. Zidane, and thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for those great questions, Julia. We are running a little bit behind. I apologize. They'll never let me do this again, but I want to call on Sarah Harari for her question.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to thank Mr. Sedan for his substantive involvement in the bidirectional EV working group that's being run through the Energy Storage Solutions docket process right now. It started pretty much at the conclusion of his pilot, and we'll be submitting comments into that docket around the V2G in 2 weeks here into that ESS docket. We have built a lot of his learnings into that process. I just wanted to ask a quick question based on his testimony today for Mr. Sedan. Based on what you've learned, is there anything that we can be doing if we do choose to advance V2G in that docket that we can future-proof the V2G technology that's being deployed or could be deployed, given what you've testified around the changes that the industry is still going through?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I think basically adopting my recommendations. As you mentioned, I do participate in the bidirectional EV working group. Maybe that can translate into a new docket specific to V2G in order to push these topics to the forefront.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. White, I think we're ready to hear from Mr. Crowley from UI. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Commissioner Beecher. If UI could step up.
Is Mr. Crowley available?
He's on here.
I see him. If not, we could loop back for general lessons learned later. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm thinking we could just go with the program administrator if Micah is here right now.
Yes, let's do that.
Thank you, Micah.
There's.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, would you like me to share slides or on?
Laura should probably pop that up in just a second, is my guess.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Laura. So, good morning, Peer Commissioners. My name is Micah Feigelson. I'm a consultant at Current Energy Group who serves as program administrator of the IES program supporting peer and non-decisional staff. I'm joined by my colleague, Jocelyn Durkay, a manager at Current Energy Group, and we appreciate PIRA's review and consideration in its review of Cycle 1 projects of the IES program. Going down to the agenda, I'll be presenting on the project review slides, and Mr. K will be presenting on the IES lessons learned later in this meeting. So to start off with, before we walk through these projects, I want to spend hopefully a quick minute on how we scored them. And we presented this slide at the previous technical meeting, so I'll aim to be brief. We evaluated every Cycle 1 project across 4 categories. Project performance being the largest at 50%, which covers cost effectiveness, KPI achievement, goal achievement, customer experience, and project execution. Of note, project cost effectiveness is 1/5 of the project performance score, so it represents 10% of our total score. And we set it up this way in part because a project's benefit cost number on its own may or may not reflect a project's cost at scale or the project's ability to deliver on its reported goals. The other three categories are economic development and job creation at 10%, underserved communities at 10%, and then scalability at 30%. On the right is how we turn these scores into a recommendation, adapted from the go, no-go framework in the IES program decision. A score above 90% is a green light, which indicates clear benefits and one that we would recommend full-scale deployment beyond the IES program. A score between 75 and 90% is a yellow light, where we would recommend the project for scale after refinements or to invite back into a future cycle for more testing. A score below 75% is a red light, where we don't recommend the project for full-scale deployment unless there are significant adjustments to the project's design, methodology, or marketability. To underline one point that we first covered in February's technical meeting, a skilling recommendation is about the type of solution being tested in this proceeding, not necessarily a verdict on the vendor themselves. All three projects on that we're presenting on today scored in the red, but this does not mean that the work lacked value, and it points us to other proceedings where for the project's lessons learned can be used. So to start with Grid Edge Networks, this project was a vehicle-to-grid demonstration built around an electric school bus. Grid Edge scored 57%, a red light, with a benefit cost result of 0 due to a lack of provided savings inputs. We are not recommending Grid Edge Networks for scale, but this is a case where the lessons learned are the primary output. And we give Grid Edge a lot of credit for how it worked through and documented the obstacles of its deployment. Grid Edge partnered with UI and ACES to deploy an electric school bus in this first of its kind V2G demonstration in Connecticut. And their platform, DIRCOM, used a substation controller and a Grid Edge controller connected over a private network built to the IEEE 1547 standard. Grid Edge Networks met all 6 milestones with 2 project modifications that added a 6-month no-cost extension for testing of the system. For our first lesson learned, Grid Edge Networks found that an existing solar system at the school conflicted with exporting power to the grid. Exporting from a battery on the same meter as a solar asset would have required a change to the site's renewable energy contract or a statute exemption, either of which would have affected the customer's revenue. So in response, Grid Edge and UI redesigned the project into a vehicle-to-load V2L system that keeps the discharge on site without affecting the existing solar assets. That pivot leads us to our lesson and kind of an ongoing question about how V2G exports get classified when they sit alongside Class 1 renewables like an on-site solar system. The second lesson that we learned is on interoperability between EV buses and chargers, as Nahum talked about in his slides. The bus that was originally on site could not operate under the current V2G standard, so Grid Edge Networks borrowed buses from its 2 other manufacturers at its own cost and converted their software to an open OCPP protocol that got its DIRCOM system talking to those compliant vehicles. This system worked in practice, but it shows how much custom effort V2G still needs when vendors are not standardized. And this matters, especially when considering the project at scale. Regarding our score, the 57% is primarily held down by a cost effectiveness result of 0. To this end, we note that the deployment was primarily designed to prove its feasibility. So the cost effectiveness figure represents and reflects kind of the nature of a first of its kind demonstration. Although we don't recommend that Grid Edge scale through the IES program, given where V2G technology and the markets exist today, we do see value in more pilots on these technologies, but that these pilots should be vetted through venues that are working on these questions at PIRA, like PIRA's bidirectional EV working group, the Energy Storage Solutions Cycle 5 proceeding, and the medium and heavy duty EV charging docket. We are glad to hear and further encourage Grid Edge to bring its deployment experience into these proceedings, and we support its call for stronger interoperability standards between medium and heavy-duty EVs. Handing this back to the PURA commissioners and PURA team, we're happy to address any questions you have regarding our report or recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and we'll come back to you for each project and then hear your general comments at the end. Mr. White?
Thank you, Commissioner Beecher. I don't have any questions about this right now. I don't know that staff have any questions.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point, so I think it looks like we're good to go. I think we'll move to the next project.
Is Mike
unless
Crowley
Mr.
here?
Crowley. Yeah, is Mr. Crowley there?
Is there anyone else from UI here by chance that might?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is Mike from UI.
Thank you. Welcome.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties with my audio. I could hear you everything, but I couldn't be heard.
So are you prepared to give us a few comments on Grid Edge?
Yeah. Are you able to pull up my presentation?
Yes.
Laura probably, yeah.
Slide 2. Perfect. Yeah, and I think, ultimately, a lot of what, Grid Edge and the program administrator, mentioned is really the same, thoughts and feelings that UI had about the project. We're very excited to, test Grid Edge's DIRCOM system, with the interoperability between charger and multiple buses. And then the use case of the flexible interconnection technology to control, charging and discharging. In terms of challenges, I think they've all kind of, been discussed, already, but just, I think it's something that's worth mentioning is just, UI and NACM, working with that, bidirectional working group, bringing a lot of these challenges, from, our pilots, to the forefront of those discussions, especially around, the co-location of different energy exports, the Class 1 renewable, the discharging from the battery, and then, the problems that we ran into that Naka mentioned, regarding, the market readiness, the standardization issues, the problems we ran into with, different manufacturers and service providers entering and exiting the marketplace. And it really just kind of added a lot of, hurdles that were unexpected, for us to jump over. And then one lesson learned that, we didn't really talk about yet, is just the EDC's ability to kind of handle a new technology like this. And right off the bat, I think like the main, issue that we kind of ran into, was really from a cybersecurity perspective. And just utilizing substation data and control signals with a third party, in a manner that we necessarily haven't done, in the past. So I think that was like one of those, good lessons learned, something for us to look at. And UI has a plan in place, to put something together. So, little more prepared, the next time we come to a similar type of pilot. But I think the closing of the Grid Edge project, came at a good time. It was right around the time we started that bidirectional charging working group. In terms of successes, again, I'll echo, the fact that just, finding some of the issues, some of the things that we need to look at, we need to pay a little bit more attention to, was a huge success of the pilot. Getting those things, ironed out or starting to iron out, those more complicated problems. And again, just referencing, that bidirectional EV working group again. I know there's a report coming out on August 1st, and I think that's really kind of like the right place to kind of continue, these types of, research, further the investigation into, how charging interacts with existing programs, rate tariffs, how to get around the industry standardization issues. So looking forward to that coming out in a few weeks, kind of helping guide what happens next, in this forum. I think just to keep it brief, I don't want to get too repetitive with what everybody else has said. I think that's it from UI's perspective.
Thanks so much, Mr. Crowley. And I think we're ready to move on to SGS. I'm sorry, Sarah Harari.
Thank you, Commissioner. I had a quick question. In other parts of this discussion around this project, we focused on the vehicles, but I did think it's really interesting that one of the challenges that this project had was that there was solar already on the facility they were looking to interconnect on. And I don't think that that's going to be something that's, limited to this pilot as we continue to deploy sophisticated, grid edge technology. The class 1 renewable classification conflict is forcing a different kind of workaround here. What's the appropriate docket to navigate tariff implications of co-locating different kinds of resources and figuring out how there's interplay between the technologies, Mike?
I'm sorry, could you repeat just the first part of that? You kind of cut out for me.
What's the right tariff or venue for the authority to consider how different technologies impact each other's tariffs going forward? Does UI have a recommendation there?
I can't speak on behalf of UI, but I think I'll echo what Nakam, mentioned is, kind of looking at it through like a separate docket, something that might come out of that working group, and just something that'll give us, a vehicle, a mechanism of some sort that'll give us the ability to take a more holistic approach, to this type of technology, what the programming looked like, and then, what the implications going to be on, existing, programs or tariffs that are out there. Personal, perspective right there. But I think, if warranted, we can definitely come back with, a more official UI response on that.
Okay, great. I think Molly has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Just related to the issue with the co-located solar, I'm just curious if there have been any either pilot projects or other programs in other states that have encountered similar challenges with co-located storage and solar, and if there have been any solutions proposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. UI's parent company operates in Connecticut, Maine, and New York, and we can definitely do some research to see if that's been an issue that's popped up before. But as far as I'm aware, in the state of Connecticut, this was the first time that this popped up in a regulated pilot project where we were forced to kind of come up with some sort of workaround. So.
Thank you. And I believe Mr. White has a few questions as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as a general question to both of the utilities, I believe Eversource, I'm not sure if Eversource is here yet, but I know they will be presenting today. Grid Edge, Mr. Sedan spoke to UL 1741 SD, and I believe his recommendation was for Pura to mandate its use by the utilities. I'm just curious, even before getting to that point, do either of the utilities have any views on the status of UL 1741 SD and the direction it's headed? Is it something that you're eager to work with or are open-minded to at this point?
So on behalf of UI, I'm kind of going through the attendance list just to see if there is a subject matter expert that's a little
Understood.
closer to that on here. I don't see one, and I'm really not, privy enough to all the ins and outs of that to comment. but definitely something that we can get back to the authority on
I
Just
at a later
I
date.
think Eversource is here now too.
just a quick correction. It's SB, like Baker.
Oh, sorry, SB. I apologize for.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Eversource, Mark Lemenager.
Yep, thank you. And I'm just noting, similar to Mike, that we don't have a subject matter expert on this call regarding position on that. So
Okay.
we can follow up and we can provide that, but not live.
Yeah, no, understood. And I don't know that I don't see any need for it for any follow up on that. I just thought if you happen to have an idea. And then I do have one more question and I will move on. I'm just curious, do either of the utilities have any vehicle to grid customers right now? Just to be clear on that. I know we got an interrog from Eversource saying we have some electric vehicles, heavy duty or medium to heavy duty vehicles, but it wasn't totally clear if any of them did vehicle to grid discharging. And that's for both utilities.
I think on UI's side, right now, I'm going to have to go with no. I think the closest thing we have is the Cycle 2 project bidirectional energy, but we're still working on getting some customers connected under that. And that would be residential.
And Eversource is similarly supporting the bidirectional pilot. It's in both service territories.
Okay. Yeah, I asked what went through my mind is I've seen some newspaper articles about the town of Brantford with a big electric school bus fleet. I wasn't sure where the utilities were on that. So with that, I'm good, Commissioner Beecher.
Yeah, I think we're ready to move to the next project.
Thank you. So as Smarter Grid Solutions is up.
Great. Thank you, Mr. White. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Commissioners and Authority staff, for this opportunity to present the results of our Mitsubishi Electric Power Products and Smarter Grid Solutions IS Cycle 1 pilot project conducted with our EDC partner, United Illuminating. Thank you to all the parties who participated in this pilot project under Cycle 1. My name is Youssef Orest. I am the Operations Manager for Mitsubishi Electric Power Products Digital Solutions Division, and I'm excited to be here today. I just want to introduce the couple of topics that we're going to cover today. So recap of the completed project, the lessons learned under this project, the project's performance, and our vision for how we can scale this project forward, the EDC being ready to operationalize this program. I have some colleagues with me today. I have Selene Benitez and Xin Hua, as well as Stuart McMahon, who's not listed as a presenter, but is available for questions. Next slide, please. Thank you again. This IES pilot project set out to deploy the StrataGrid DERMS platform, along with the Element Grid, or sometimes known as a DER gateway technology, at 5 distributed energy resource sites to enable advanced DER management, that's a distributed energy resource, secure monitoring, and flexible interconnection. The solution is designed to address key grid challenges by reducing the need for expensive or long lead time infrastructure upgrades, accelerating DER interconnection timelines, and maximizing existing grid capacity, as well as improving operational visibility for utilities. By leveraging flexible interconnection strategies, dynamic operating envelopes, and proven DER use cases, the project set out to demonstrate the opportunity to increase hosting capacity for United Illuminating, enabling more DERs to connect to the grid without major system investments. The platform will also provide real-time monitoring, grid edge control, and fail-safe capabilities to enhance reliability, resilience, and constraint management for United Illuminating. Additionally, the solution does build on proven DERMS deployments across utilities here in the Northeast, reducing implementation risk and accelerating the realization of operational and customer benefits. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Selene Benitez. Thank you.
Thanks, Youssef. Hi, I'm Selene Benitez. I'm an engineer at MEPI and a member of the project team. Over the next few slides, I'll provide an overview of the technical architecture deployed and highlight some key components of our design. Moving forward to the next slide, please. Starting at the top of the architecture diagram on the left, we see the United Illuminating network space. It's symbolized by a dotted line. In this network, the utility SCADA system interfaces directly with our StrataGrid software, where StrataGrid serves as our centralized management layer for real-time monitoring and control of each energy resource site. Moving down the diagram, we see the DERMS platform communicates with DER grid edge devices located throughout the service territory. Our grid edge devices are local controllers running our software and communicating to the central DERMS controller. For this project, we connect to 2 DER sites, as shown by the dotted lines, showing local area networks at each site. To speak briefly about one of the DERMS key features done by StrataGrid, the platform executes constraint management by monitoring for threshold breaches like a current or voltage breach at a measurement point location. The measurement point can be at a substation or other point of interest. Our platform monitors this constraint location by interfacing directly to the utility OT systems. The table on the right is a summary of our complete deployment. We installed 2 instances of StrataGrid at United Illuminating's network, known as the production and development environment in those first 2 rows. We also successfully commissioned 2 DER gateway edge devices at 2 sites, shown in the last 2 rows. Moving forward, please. So these are details on our pilot site deployments. The first site is Bridgeport Seaside Solar Facility, which is a utility-owned solar generation site with 16 inverters managed through a local control system. This site was originally operating under a simple control scheme from the smart inverter manufacturer. The second site is Connecticut Transit at the Hamden Depot, which is an electric bus charging facility with 10 EV charge stations and 23 buses. These buses have significant limited charging requirements and are cycled throughout the day. Moving forward to the next slide, please. Over the course of the project, we demonstrated common DERMS capabilities at PV and EV sites, including forecasting and general network operations. Starting with connectivity and control, we demonstrated interoperability between DERMS platform and the existing utility SCADA systems. We also validated reliable communication between the grid edge DER gateway controllers, which ensured that the DERMS software can control those field assets. This showcased that the DERMS platform and the DER gateway solution was successfully integrated into the United Illuminating ecosystem, proving that there was successful utility network compliance and overall system compatibility. For solar DER management, all smart inverter functions operated as expected. At this site, StrataGrid integrates to the local control system for those 16 inverters and provides smart inverter functionality, power factor control, and constraint management and curtailment. We also verified fail-safe operation during loss of communication scenarios, confirming that system reliability is maintained even when communications to DERMS are lost. At the EV fleet management site, we demonstrated constraint managed charging for the system to optimize charging activities while respecting network and local site limits. The same EV controller at that fleet depot is present at other depot locations. Usually the site developer would log on to the EV controller website portal to view conditions, but with StrataGrid, we proved that we can expose and control the EV fleet charging in the central DERMS platform. Lastly, we also verified fail-safe functionality to ensure that reliable operation under loss of communications. On the right-hand side of the slide, we have load forecasting and optimization. We analyzed a full year of historical load data from both demonstration sites. Using this data, we generated a load schedule for each of them within our forecast and optimization tool, which were incorporated into profiles for both of these sites used for scheduling and operational planning purposes. Finally, under constraint management for both sites, we validated real-time monitoring of those network conditions. The system successfully detected and prevented potential constraint violations and demonstrated dynamic control to maintain compliance with grid operating limits. And with that, I'll hand this off to my colleague Sheen.
Yeah, thanks, Lenny. Hello, everyone. I'm Shane Hua, Project Manager. And I'll spend the next 2 slides addressing challenges we encountered and the key lessons that we learned. So in short, the project team encountered challenges around program readiness, infrastructure readiness, communications, and DER site integration. As far as program readiness is concerned, we believe that because United Illuminating did not yet have customer participation programs in place that were directly tied to our pilot project, recruitment efforts early on were a bit difficult. Additionally, existing project commitments limited their time, their timing, and the total effort that they could allocate towards this project. Ultimately, though, we addressed these issues by scaling our intended scope from 5 sites to 2, and instead we demonstrated 1 use case per site. Instead of demonstrating 1 use case per site, we demonstrated 5 use cases across 2 sites, as mentioned earlier. So this shifted some of the pressure off of the utility by alleviating the need to secure agreements with the pilot sites and reducing potential infrastructure costs related to metering and communications at those sites. We did indeed encounter some issues around legacy metering at the solar site and lack of communication between each site and SCADA. We were, however, able to resolve these issues with modernized equipment. With the addition of modernized metering and communications devices, we were able to remotely monitor, troubleshoot, and configure the solar site. Next slide, please. So by working through these challenges, we learned some key lessons that we can categorize as shown on this slide. As far as technical success factors are concerned, our monitoring, testing, and control of both sites showed how we can support reliable and secure remote grid operations of DERs. We were also able to demonstrate that our constraint management algorithms performed as expected, and as a result, we do believe that our platform is technologically scalable if the proper infrastructure and resourcing are in place. We also learned some hard lessons in timeline expectations. MEPI is accustomed to deploying our solution on the scale of weeks to months rather than the years that we encountered in this project. In short, having telecom, cybersecurity, and change control processes in place early on, or perhaps even before project kickoff, can accelerate our deployment timelines. That said, since we do have SCADA and communications integrations in place now, this should reduce future project timelines. From a program perspective, we learned that prioritizing high-value use cases and focusing on standardized use cases to drive the pilot site recruitment process are key success factors. And then finally, from a project perspective, and from our experience in the industry generally, we learned that successful DERMS deployments require a dedicated utility project team and early team contributor engagement to keep the scope clear, goals aligned, and timelines intact. And that's all for me. Thank you. I'll kick it back over to you, Seth.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Thank you, Mr. Hua. I want to just speak briefly about, the suggestions that we have for, next slide, please, moving forward from where we are today. Our suggestions are really focused on advancing flexible interconnection in the state of Connecticut. I believe these are also covered under Docket 250127. On the left-hand side of the screen, just to talk specifically about the Seaside solar PV site, we recognize that this is a great system that we can use for demonstrating the capabilities to other prospective DER sites within the United Illuminating service territory. And because of its similarity in how PV sites work, it could also be used for stationary BESS systems as well. We think that, this site can be used for demonstration of multiple types of use cases. For CT Transit, to discuss next steps there, United Illuminating and CT Transit, we think, can work together to operationalize what we piloted at the Hamden facility. We can work additionally with CT Transit sites. They have additional sites that they express interest in and include those in a flexible interconnection program. We do recognize that seeking, program approval early before launching a pilot has a big impact on how we move forward. So working with both United Illuminating and CT Transit in advance of a permanent program will yield better results. And finally, on the left-hand side of the screen here, a program implementation for EV flexible interconnection, really belongs to United Illuminating, but we're happy to continue supporting that. On the right-hand side of the screen, for future enhancements, these are technical in nature, but we can add functionality like power factor control and optimization. We can do integration of substation conditions. We can do upstream grid network visibility for United Illuminating operators, which really leads us to improving SCADA controllability for DERs on the grid. In terms of a strategic approach, scaling DERMS integration by adding similar PV, BESS, and EV sites will help StrataGrid, control and establish, long-term protocols that United Illuminating can use to advance flexible interconnections and bring more DERs online. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. In MEPI's experience, successful flexibility interconnection and DER programs require three key foundations: strong utility ownership and resourcing, regulatory support, and of course, clear program design. Utilities that define use cases up front, establish structured DER onboarding frameworks, and align internal teams. And that would be like across leadership, operations, IT, OT, their engineering teams, security, and field services, lead to better outcomes, especially when that alignment happens with third-party providers like DER sites. We consistently see better outcomes and faster deployment timelines. Specifically around United Illuminating, we believe that they are in a strong position to launch and scale a flexible interconnection program. The StrataGrid platform is already deployed with communications, connectivity, and control capabilities validated and ready for expansion. This framework established through the Flexible Interconnection Docket 2501/27. The primary next steps around that will be building a permanent program team, training the resources, and recruiting participant DER sites. Effective program management and stakeholder coordination will be critical to driving future adoption. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. Looking ahead, the program creates a scalable pathway for interconnecting solar, battery, storage, EV fleets, and maybe even inclusive of demand response and virtual power plants as use cases that could be added to this program. Once the program structure is in place, new DER sites can be onboarded in as little as 1 to 3 months, which is what we typically see once there's an established program, helping avoid costly and time-consuming infrastructure upgrades for new DER sites. Utility readiness is expected within the 6 to 12-month timeframe following docket approval, of course, and enabling new DER resources to be connected within a total timeframe of 7 to 15 months from the docket approval. If you look at the time scale that we have here, just to be clear about what's on the screen here, building a program and resourcing it, training folks, and then entering a program recruitment phase does take about a year, is pretty typical for what we see in the industry. And then DER site onboarding, there's a process that needs to be built and followed there. Once we start recruiting new DER sites, the Mitsubishi Electric Power Products team will help configure the DERM system, the IT and OT interfaces, and do some initial production testing so that we can bring new DERs online. So we have some sample DER integration sites here. We typically see those taking 1 to 3 months. And with that, I think I'll turn it back to the commission and staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am scanning for commissioner questions. Do we have any at this time from the commissioners? I'm not seeing any, so I'll have the staff. I think Molly will lead the questions here.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Thank you to the SGS team for the presentation. I think you already answered my first question, but just to confirm, is the company a participant in Docket 2501/27 where flexible interconnection plans are being considered?
I would say thank you, Ms. Charles. We are not directly party to it, but we are involved because we're the technology provider.
Thank you. So has the company shared any of its recommendations or lessons learned in that docket to date?
Yes, we have discussed those.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, did SGS sort of establish any target or estimate of curtailment in advance for the participating sites?
I believe as Mr. Hua covered, we originally had 5 potential sites that we were looking to bring into the project. We ended up with 2, and so we did make some adjustments along the path. So I believe that the Seaside Solar Site is approximately 1 megawatt. It might actually be up to 5. So theoretically, that particular site could be its maximum capacity. We could curtail the entire site. At the CT Transit Hamden facility, I believe that there are 23 electric buses currently. So theoretically, the entirety of that fleet could be managed in a very direct way with this platform. I unfortunately don't know the total size of the battery fleet there.
Thank you. So on the issue of metering and outdated equipment, at what point in the project did SGS identify that the metering equipment had to be replaced?
I would say just an estimate here that was probably within the first 6 months that we recognized that the equipment at the site needed modernization so that we could communicate between the UI network and the endpoint device, which we call our DER gateway.
Okay, got it. And then do you expect that outdated metering equipment would be a common issue if flexible interconnection was scaled more widely? Is that something that would be encountered frequently?
Certainly for existing sites, that could be the case, absolutely. Although, part of, I think the goal here is to recruit new DER types of sites to the network. For those new sites, as part of the program development, you would come up with a potentially standard package that you would recommend to prospective sites so that they could adopt that equipment so that they can be onboarded quickly.
Okay, thank you. So for new sites, this would be unlikely to be an issue.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think in your final report and then interrog responses, you mentioned that the technology has been used for pilot projects for flexible interconnection in New York. I'm just curious if the technology has been used beyond those pilots for flexible interconnection more broadly.
Yes, actually, that's a great question. The StrataGrid platform has been around for approximately 15 years, has been deployed to the tune of about 1.8 gigawatts of load that is connected to StrataGrid systems and under control. That's in North America, the UK, and several parts of Europe.
Thank you. Sorry, you said North America as part of that?
Yes, North America is part of that.
Thank you. And then, so the StrataGrid active network management, if I understand correctly, is the DERMS platform, so that's software, and then the Element Grid is DER gateway hardware. I'm just wondering if those two technologies can be used independently of each other or if they have to be paired. So like if the DER gateway was installed, but there was a different DERMS platform used, is that something that's possible or not?
That's a great question. Thank you. Yes, the DER gateway can be installed independently and can act as a fail-safe device. We would essentially enter the same type of configuration and parameters onto that device, and it could be standalone. It could theoretically integrate to other platforms. And functionally, that device on its own will still control the site given set parameters. If it's standing alone, it just loses communication and monitoring of the actual SCADA system at the utility and won't be able to communicate its information back to the central network.
Okay. And is that something that's been tried before, sort of integrating with a different DERMS platform?
I actually can't speak to that. I'm not certain of that. We have not done that in North America, but that may have happened in Europe.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last question. I'm curious how, for the Bridgeport Seaside project, how was that deployment and operation impacted by the fact that the facility is owned by Avangrid? Would something have changed if the site was owned by a third party?
That's a good question. It's my understanding that that facility is actually part of a regulatory carve-out for a generation asset. So it was a slightly complicated facility to make sure that we used that as a pilot site appropriately. No, I don't think that if it was owned by a third party, if it was a pre-existing site, some of the historical technologies that might have been installed at a site like that could have still been standing in place, and we may have faced similar challenges. Back to the point about creating a standard package for new DERs and clarifying which technology pieces are needed, like metering and communications, was very valuable as we build a program.
Thank you for those responses. I think that's all for me. So back to you, Commissioner Beecher.
Thanks so much, Molly. Mr. Crowley, do you have comments on this project?
I do. If you want to bring up, I believe, the third slide for me. Perfect. Yeah, I think, kind of jumping right into, the lessons learned, and something that kind of keeps on coming up as we discuss, this project and flexible interconnection in general is just around like customer recruitment. For the pilot, we reached out to a number of, larger organizations within UI service territory to kind of walk them through what we're trying to test and pilot. And ultimately, it's very difficult for us to get, these different organizations on board, really just because there could be some operational disruptions that they have to deal with, and costs, associated with, reviewing agreements, having, facilities personnel, working on the project, things of that nature. And then, kind of taking that to like an at scale perspective, one of the things that like we're looking at when looking at, flexible interconnection, is really not like the need to recruit customers to utilize this type of solution, but really kind of match the solution with, customer needs. So like those customers that are looking to expand their DER capacity, or, coming in new, and, trying to get around, potentially costly infrastructure upgrades. So I don't think it would be so much as like a proactive recruitment, more or less as the need arises, as we're reviewing, interconnection agreements, if there are issues that we run into, applying this type of technology to that. So, just kind of wanted to point that out. I know, as just, talked about, some of like the hurdles we ran into from, an IT integration and communications, link, establishing that. Also just wanted to point out, not so much that the metering equipment that we had on site at the solar site was outdated, but it wasn't necessarily installed with the thought that we would be, performing a flexible interconnection, pilot at that site. So, the meter equipment was good and able to do what we needed to do, and then required upgrades, for the pilot. So just wanted to point that out as well. But, ultimately, there were some successes with this, project. UI, gained some, insights into the A&M technologies, and that is going to, or has helped inform, a lot of what's been going on in Docket 250107. And ultimately, what we're kind of looking at is flexible interconnection. A solution like this is a single component of like a larger, grid DERM solution. From our perspective, we're looking to, have the allowance to conduct a competitive procurement for that, larger grid DERM solution that would meet all of our use cases. I believe, we've got 8 or so, different requirements, for that, but that would be including, a flexible interconnection component such as this.
Does that wrap up your comments?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for those insights. Mr. Feigelson, would you like to? Oh, there's, I see Julia's online. Julia?
Sorry, Commissioner.
No problem.
Please proceed with Mr. Feigelson. I can hold my questions until he's done.
If you're sure. Okay, so now we'll hear from the program administrator if he's ready.
Hi, yes.
There you are. Thank you. We'll load up your slides.
And that would be
One moment.
slide 5 in
Sorry,
our
a
presentation.
little bit of a delay.
worries.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Smarter Grid Solutions, or MEPI, set out to deploy its StrataGrid platform to hold distributed energy resources within grid limits in real time, using a process called active network management that could help UI defer capital upgrades through flexible interconnection capabilities. MEPI's project scored at 35%, a red light with our criteria, with a benefit cost result of 0 due to a lack of provided savings inputs. The original plan for this project was to test 5 use cases at 5 sites. To this end, MEPI spent about 9 months of deployment on outreach and identified 4 eligible sites, 2 of which could fit within the program's 18-month deployment window. The scope of this project was reduced from 5 sites to 2. As a result, the solar site in Bridgeport and the CT Transit bus depot in Hamden. And to meet this change in scope, the project budget was reduced by about 14%. And the deployment timeline was extended from an original 12 months to 24. Following these changes, MEPI could not complete all of its milestones or demonstrate quantifiable benefits within its deployment window. But we note that much of its deployment after the customer outreach went to upgrading the site metering and clearing UI's IT and security requirements before the system could actually be used. As a result, the program administrator does not recommend scaling MEPI's project in its current state, primarily because it didn't have time to demonstrate measurable benefits for its demonstrated use cases. However, as noted, PURA is reviewing flexible interconnection in Docket 250127, investigation into interconnection process modifications. And I believe a decision is expected in the coming months, and we're glad to hear that UI and MEPI are bringing their experience to the docket and addressing lessons learned from the deployment. Based on their deployment in this proceeding, the central lesson we found was that flexible interconnection and active network management are complex capabilities that need standardized contracts at the outset of project deployments, with standardized terms for performance baselines, curtailment, compensation, and data sharing. With these contracts in place, we expect MEPI would have spent less time of its deployment on the setup and been able to demonstrate some project benefits. Additionally, since UI is in the process of procuring a DERMS platform and other proceedings, we recommend the authority direct UI to run a cost-benefit comparison of DERMS platforms, their hardware, their software, and system design requirements, and their capabilities in its consideration. Handing this back to the PURA team for questions, we're happy to talk about our report and recommendations.
Thanks very much. Julia?
Commissioner, I have questions across the 3 presenters. Do you have a preference how I address them, or just kind of go for it?
No, go for it.
Okay, great. First, to the MEPI team, I just have a couple of questions. And thank you, first of all, for the helpful presentation and for all the work on this project. I believe I heard you say that at least some of the systems that were deployed during the project would be needed at scale are now sort of in place and would not necessarily be needed to be reinstalled or repeated at scale. Could you confirm or explain further which components are are established now and wouldn't have to be a recurring cost or something like that at scale, if any?
Thank you, Mr. Main. I can happily answer that question. You know, the StrataGrid platform has been installed within the United Illuminating network, so that platform still exists and has not yet been decommissioned. So that is a major cost component, is doing that initial implementation of the platform. That's one side of it. Is on what I would say is the United Illuminating side of things, getting things passed between that installation of the StrataGrid platform through their network and the IT, OT comms and the security things that need to happen around communication out to the grid edge for a utility organization. Those have been tested, and there's a model ready to be deployed for that particular instance. And we were also able to test new network devices, including our DER gateway, right? So the actual router at a site that would receive, telecommunications, as well as the standard sort of design of our DER gateway has been all tested. So none of those things would need to be repeated. Really, it comes back to things like program recruitment and building a program within a utility organization.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So to sort of expand on that, you highlighted some recommended next steps in the two test sites. So would those be considered, and there's this recurring recommendation around continued testing and learnings here. So would those be considered continued work or scope expansion of the existing projects, or could that be continued separately by UI at this point now with the way that the StrataGrid and Element Grid have been established?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I don't want to speak for UI, but the Seaside Solar site has been tested. It has a normal operating mode that it's been restored to, but that site could be used to demonstrate to other prospective DER sites or other solar developers who might be interested in joining a program. So that's really what the next steps for that particular site are about, is just being able to showcase or demonstrate to prospective DER sites, what control actually looks like and what the impact is. For CT Transit, oh, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No, please.
For the CT Transit site, and again, I don't want to speak for United Illuminating or CT Transit, it's our understanding that CT Transit broadly has some goals to electrify their busing fleet, and a preventative item that is keeping them from moving forward with advancing electrification is that there are upgrades needed to the substations where those facilities interconnect. Part of what we were demonstrating here is the StrataGrid platform's capability in ensuring that we can control, or the United Illuminating and or CT Transit can control the level of charging demand that happens at peak grid events, so that they can add additional charging infrastructure and advance their busing fleet without waiting for a substation to be rebuilt or to buy additional charging equipment beyond what they need presently.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Could UI perhaps respond to those, and whether there's been any consideration around the continued operation or investigation at those two sites?
Yeah, I think in terms of the Seaside Solar site, I think it's exactly what Yusuf mentioned, is keeping it on site there would really just be for demonstration for potential other use cases. Currently, there's not a direct need to keep that system active there. So obviously, a concern that UI would have is in terms of cost recovery, like what would be continued costs to keep that in place, and how we would be able to recover those costs if it were to stay in place for demonstration purposes. And then for the CT Transit site, I think it really boils down to the timeline of CT Transit for their expansion. As of now, again, the system's not necessarily needed to control the buses that they currently have in place there. But I think we would have to have some additional conversations with them, identify what their timeline for growth is, and then compare that to what that circuit looks like right now, and what we perceive as potential grid constraints, if any. So that would have to be some additional conversations with the customer.
Thank you. And just a couple other questions for UI, if that's okay, Commissioner. With that in mind, considering about the demonstration projects, and what is the most recent step, or maybe even next step in docket number 250127, just since not everyone on this call may be involved in that proceeding, and how is UI incorporating the learnings from the MEPI project and the demonstration sites into the most recent or next steps, I guess.
Yeah, I believe that there's a report that will be coming out. I know I was involved in some interrogatory, so there's definitely been some knowledge share between that docket and this program. I'm not terribly, in tune with everything going on in that, but there has been knowledge share, and I believe that we have, something due either just recently or coming up, where we will be, including, either a recommendation or, potential proposal for that like larger grid DERMS solution, and where a flexible interconnection component would fit in with that.
Thank you. And I think my last question around the recruitment issue, and the fact that, at scale, you would not necessarily need to go out and recruit customers, but rather they would come to the utility seeking this as a solution to interconnect and expanding capacity. Does UI have an idea of what the current frequency of that or demand for that type of issue is right now, or is it expected to be a thing that's in 2 years down the line, 1 year? I guess I'm just wondering, at what point is this going to be at scale necessity?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on, what the customers in our service territory are trying to do. I think, CT Transit is one where, we've been working closely with them, on this plan of theirs for the past couple of years. I believe there's been, some delays or pushes in when they're going to be going, 100% electric. So I think it really just kind of depends on that. If they're looking, to increase significantly the number of buses, and then another manufacturer in that same circuit is looking, to increase, their load. Those are the things that are going to kind of come into play with this. I couldn't necessarily put like a timeline around it because anything could happen. But I think that's really like the best answer that we can kind of provide at this point. Is it's really based on customer activity, and then how it interplays with what's going on, with that circuit, with other customers as well. But as of now, when we were recruiting for this initially, we were unable, I think that was 2024, unable to find, customers that were moving forward with activities that would necessitate a solution like this.
Great, thank you. And if possible, could I just ask one question to Eversource quickly? Sure, thank you. Is Mr. Lemenager still on the line, or a representative from Eversource?
Yep, still here.
Yeah, I'm just curious if Eversource could speak to how they have, incorporated any of the learnings from this project, even though it wasn't in your territory, into any planning efforts or, investments on your and throughout your territory right now.
So I'll have to take this question back to our folks that are more subject matter experts. I am not familiar with what we have done with the learnings from this pilot. I know we've reviewed the prior issuance of the final report, but I don't know if we've gone and disseminated the revised report with the final pilots that needed extra time to go through.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Julia. I think the Pura team might have a few more questions for the EDC partners.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Just one more question to Smarter Grid Solutions based on UI's comments just now. So in terms of the recommendation to continue the Bridgeport site as a demonstration for other projects, UI brought up cost recovery concerns. I'm just curious what sort of level of additional costs would be expected since the project is already operational.
Thank you. Great question. I'd say there's two primary components. There's some telecoms costs that, to keep the site up and active, there's some costs that are there. And maybe I'll add a third component, which I haven't covered the second yet, but the third would be, resourcing on the United Illuminating end and or for Mitsubishi Electric Power Products / Smart Grid Solutions. And then, of course, there's a license cost to just ensure that the platform is up and operating and updated. So ongoing maintenance around the software platform.
Thank you. And then a few questions to UI on their presentation. So I'm just curious if UI's had any coordination or information sharing with either New York, I'm sorry, I wrote the acronym here, NYSEG and Rochester Gas and Electric as other Avangrid subsidiaries that have deployed pilot projects with SGS. So there's been any sharing of lessons learned there.
Yeah, definitely. There has, both states have, slightly different, operations. But so that, as part of it, like what we did in New York, we can get learnings from, but it doesn't necessarily directly apply to the grid architecture, here in Connecticut. So, there's definitely been, back and forth and discussions on that. So.
Thank you. And is that something that would potentially be shared in the interconnection docket or elsewhere?
I'm not 100% sure, but I can get back to you on that. I'd have to check with our resources handling that. Okay, thank you. And then this question is sort of in reference to both this project and the Grid Edge Networks project. So UI in comments had noted that the SGS architecture is centralized versus the Grid Edge network, which is decentralized. And I'm just wondering if UI could elaborate a little bit on the benefits and drawbacks of centralized versus decentralized DERM solutions for both flexible interconnection and any other use cases. Yeah, I think it kind of boils down to, what the need is. So with the MEPI SGS solution, there's one, virtual communication link, set up within UI's, virtual network. And then the individual customers, can have the, the hardware, like the dispatching, DERMS, gateway at their location. So, and I'll let, Yusuf or someone else from, SGS comment on how many nodes can be out there at various customers that can communicate with that virtual strata grid. Whereas the Grid Edge solution is more like a one-to-one, type solution. So, if we ended up having a situation where we really only needed, this solution once every 5 years, it might be more of a cost benefit to go with a Grid Edge type solution. If, we end up seeing that, we need, repeated control solution over, DERs that are out there, then, that might be a situation where the MEPI solution is more cost effective.
Thanks. Do either SGS or Grid Edge Networks have anything to add to that?
I'd happily do so. I think it's worth pointing out that there's a key difference between sort of a grid edge system and a system like StrataGrid that can sit within the utility network. Utility network vis-a-vis the SCADA system, the ADMS system, can actually get connected directly to the StrataGrid platform. So we can actually monitor real grid conditions in real time and actually action against those grid conditions. So StrataGrid can have multiple topologies, different sort of thresholds. It can incorporate numerous feeders, numerous substations, topologies across those given grid conditions, and we can have several hundred DERs connected all at the same time. We can also, connect directly, through a DER gateway type of device, but we can also link up with other types of programs, whether those are thermostat programs, technology like the Grid Edge Networks programs. We can interconnect all those different things. So StrataGrid really can act like an integration layer. So it can actually monitor the grid, but it also can connect to all of those different devices in the field network.
Thank you. Mr. Sedan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think Mike and Yusuf framed it quite well. It's all a question of scale, right? So if you need a system-wide solution for thousands of DER assets, then a centralized DRAMs will be required. If the need is not just a single site, we actually manage more than just a single site. We manage everything down from a substation. But let's say if you have in the case of Eversource, 220 substations in the state of Connecticut, and only 10% of them have DER attached to them or are congested and need flexible interconnection, then you can solve the problem much cost effectively with deploying the DERCOM solution in those 10 or 20 substations rather than having a centralized DRAMs. So it's all a question of scale and where the problem is. So apply the right solution for the right problem.
So I tend to think of that as optimization. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Beecher.
Any other questions? Okay, I think, Mr. White, I think we're ready to move to our third project.
Thank you, Commissioner. If Tantalus could step up.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Pete Londa, and I have the privilege of serving as President and CEO of Tantalus Systems. I'm joined by several teammates and a representative from Opinion Dynamics who are available to address questions and participate in today's presentation. On behalf of our organization and the companies and institutions that joined us as a consortium in this effort, I want to begin by thanking the state of Connecticut, PURA, its staff, the program administrator, United Illuminating, and the organizations that contributed and built the IES program that was brought together to design, test, and evaluate advanced technologies in partnership with the state's electric distribution companies. While we had a number of individual contributors throughout this project, I'd like to share a special thanks to Mike Crawley of United Illuminating and Jonathan Leake at Tantalus Systems for their unrelenting efforts to support the deployment of this project. Please note that my comments today are being made not only as a technology participant in this program, but also as a residential ratepayer in Norwalk, Connecticut, where I have raised my family and resided for over 20 years. Additionally, it should be noted that the U.S. headquarters of Tantalus is also based in Norwalk, Connecticut, thereby making our company a commercial rate player in the state. If we can flip to slide 3, I thought it'd be helpful to provide a brief overview of Tantalus for those who may not be familiar with us. Tantalus has a rich and proud history of over 35 years, supporting now over 330 electric utilities across the United States and Canada to support those utilities' grid modernization journey. As you can see on the top right-hand side, we've been building our presence here in the state of Connecticut for over a decade by serving alongside Norwalk Public Utilities, the community of Jewett City, and the Mohegan Sun community as their grid modernization technology partner. With our existence and presence here in Connecticut, please know that the interest and efforts that we've put forth as part of the IES program are not only geared towards helping the electric distribution companies, but for us at Tantalus, it's personal because we live here. Given our purpose to enable grid modernization initiatives for utilities, we assembled a diverse, multidisciplinary, and highly qualified consortium as reflected on slide 5 of our presentation. We can jump forward there, whoever's controlling. Thank you. The consortium includes a diverse, multidisciplinary, and highly qualified group of companies that geared to test and deploy a functioning end-to-end data and communications framework capable of delivering an interoperable approach to demand flexibility and grid visibility through cycle 1 of the IES program. As reflected on slide 6, our project was anchored by the TrueSense Gateway, which is a meter socket device that retrofits between any ANSI compliant meter and residential meter socket. The TrueSense Gateway enables advanced power quality measurement while also creating a secure utility-grade communications pathway to devices located behind the meter. This feature is important because it allows utilities to expand the inclusion of participants in any load management program who otherwise may be unintentionally excluded on the basis of not having Wi-Fi inside their homes. The combination of power quality measurement and control behind the meter is important because it allows utilities to accomplish two things with one investment: improve front-of-the-meter circuit-level grid visibility that utilities such as United Illuminating have not previously been able to access through smart metering, while simultaneously building the foundation for behind-the-meter demand flexibility that EDCs and PURA can implement at a speed of value to ratepayers. Within the scope of our project, we integrated and demonstrated an ability for the utility to monitor and control smart thermostats and smart circuit breaker control modules from Savant, as well as the flex capacity water heater from GE Appliances to support flexible demand programs for storm preparation, operating challenges, and future rate programs. In addition to Tantalus's commitment here in the state of Connecticut, I had also referenced that the CEOs of GE Appliance and Savant are graduates of the University of Connecticut and have deep roots here in the state as well. The data and control capabilities that we collected at the meter socket and behind the meter were integrated into a variety of systems across United Illuminating, as well as analytics tools from Tantalus, the University of Connecticut's Eversource Energy Center, and the National Renewable Energy Lab's Distributed Energy Resources Optimization tool. The integration across multiple systems was complicated, but delivered through Tantalus's TrueSync Grid Data Management offering, which is the system of record for utilities like Pacific Gas and Electric and Southern Cal Edison, supporting the automation of their substations. As reflected on slide 7, the TrueSense Gateway and the vision of its integrated offering did not emerge in isolation. It was developed through collaboration with utilities looking to modernize their systems without ripping and replacing functioning metering infrastructure. The TrueSense Gateway is among the first devices to secure UL 2745 certification, which is a comprehensive safety testing and compliance process for meter socket adapters with communications equipment, an absolute necessity to deploy within a distribution grid, and one that PURA should consider in evaluating any additional meter socket offerings tied to both power quality and demand flexibility. As depicted on slide 8, you'll see that the TrueSense Gateway is designed to sit between existing meters and meter sockets, thereby extending the life and value of existing infrastructure as much as possible. It's that capability that is leading to Norwich Public Utilities up in the northern portion of the state here to leverage the TrueSense Gateway in expanding their AMI system that is now approaching 12, if not 15 years of age. The photographs on the right side of this slide provide visuals of actual deployments within the selected footprint of United Illuminating's distribution grid. Through the pilot program, if we can flip to slide 9, you'll see that we demonstrated a robust set of capabilities that aligned within the key themes of cycle 1. While it may have taken much longer than expected to stand up our system, which I'll address momentarily, the solution deployed in the field delivered control capabilities to trigger demand flexibility based on real-time grid conditions. We utilized electric water heaters as thermal storage. We demonstrated a path to enable time of use and dynamic rate programs. and we bolstered circuit-level grid visibility to protect transformers and other aging infrastructure. As reflected on slide 10, we learned a significant amount throughout the pilot, all of which are beneficial in helping us prepare for scale beyond this project and outside of the state of Connecticut. Since launching the TrueSense Gateway in 2024, we are fortunately deploying this technology to more than 75 utilities across 25 states and 1 Canadian province. The technology is no longer novel in concept, as it's now being deployed elsewhere under streamlined utility treatment. That point about utility treatment is central in evaluating what unfolded in this pilot. One of the key challenges that we faced, highlighted by the program administrators and United Illuminating, directly impacted the timing to assess the full value and benefit of monitoring the grid and shifting peak load. Unlike all other utilities deploying the TrueSense Gateway, the device was not treated as utility equipment in this pilot, thereby requiring us to walk through a permitting process at the local city level that was not contemplated in the original plan or milestones for this project. While we were ultimately successful navigating the permitting process in the cities of Bridgeport and Fairfield, we lost precious time between recruiting program participants and being able to actually activate devices installed in the field. We also learned that while the deployment of the TrueSense Gateway can derive front-of-the-meter benefits on any circuit, the selection of where to deploy behind-the-meter capabilities is vital to the success of any load management program in the future. As an example, our pilot was designated to target single-family homes. We encountered a limited number of homes that fell into that category, as the selected circuits that we were functioning and demonstrating the capabilities on actually had a number of multifamily properties that may or may not have been authorized and fully permitted by the cities. We also learned vital lessons with respect to the integration of systems across 6 discrete companies in our consortium, which was fairly ambitious within a pilot program. As reflected on slide 11, we set out to demonstrate interoperability across multiple organizations and systems, and despite the deployment constraints, our team ultimately succeeded in establishing an operational, interoperable system. With respect to demand flexibility, we were able to control electric water heaters and confirmed that almost 100% of the baseline electric consumption was eliminated through triggered events. On average, the flex capacity water heater translates into approximately 5.5 kilowatt hours of controllable demand. And while the controlled thermostats deployed in this pilot did not control electric heating where deployed, we did collect thermostat runtime and communication data that is relevant for forecasting and evaluating the costs and benefits of future load programs. With respect to front-of-the-meter grid visibility, we demonstrated an ability to deliver continuous, high-frequency telemetry, enabling visibility into voltage fluctuations, momentary and sustained outages, transformer loading patterns, and localized reliability events. From January 2025 through December 2025, circuits 2535 and 2536, where we deployed our technology, experienced 46 sustained outages, followed by 33 blinks and 21 momentary outages, confirming the need and value of high-resolution sensing in characterizing grid behavior across EDC's distribution grids. With that level of visibility, we believe EDCs, not only here in the state of Connecticut, but across the US, can prioritize and pinpoint investments to upgrade the grid that ultimately maximize the value and benefits for ratepayers. This is not just our consortium findings. United Illuminating stated that it agrees Tantalus was able to establish a functioning end-to-end data and communications framework in their service territory. and that although behind the meter installations were well below target, we proved the technology works. United Illuminating further stated through their filings that the front of the meter TrueSense gateway installations provided circuit level visibility that they have not had before, including insights into voltage behavior, outage patterns, and transformer loading. Opinion Dynamics, who was retained to deliver an independent assessment of the project, outlined in its corresponding reports that the system repeatedly pointed to interoperability through the integration of multiple independent technology providers, and that the level of grid visibility provided to United Illuminating through this pilot delivered immediate operational value before demand flexibility achieved scale. While we originally targeted 200 locations at an expected installation labor cost of $90 per site with no permitting fees and an installation time of 30 minutes per location, we were ultimately successful in recruiting 200 participants. In practice, because the gateway was not treated as utility equipment, the unexpected permitting process, corresponding site inspections, and the coordination among UI metering personnel, electricians, inspectors, and Tantalus stretched the average installation time from the initially estimated 30 minutes to approximately 1.5 hours. It also had a cascading impact on the time of the deployment, which was originally expected to run for 4 to 6 weeks and ultimately consume 6 months. The delay mattered as it contributed to participant attrition, shortening the operating window and limiting the ability to gather seasonal data originally envisioned, particularly for the winter demand flexibility use cases. From our perspective, treating the TrueSense gateway as utility equipment or other devices like the TrueSense gateway that may be deployed in the field in the future would remove most of the barriers that constrained this pilot. In our responses to the interrogatories, we explained that a uniform statewide approach or exemption would likely streamline deployments in the future, would reduce labor-related installation costs, avoid permitting and inspection burdens, and mitigate customer eligibility obstacles. As a point of reference, the TrueSense gateway is being deployed by Norwich Public Utilities, as well as 74 other utilities across the US. This pilot is the only example where permitting has been required. As a participant in this program and as a ratepayer in Connecticut, we believe there's sufficient findings at this stage to, at a minimum, extend the pilot through March 31, 2027. As reflected on slide 12, an extension would allow the system to run through a full winter season, support further assessment of behind-the-meter load flexibility, and continue generating the front-of-the-meter power quality and reliability insights that already showed immediate operational value. The TrueSense gateway can help identify stressed assets, constrained circuits, and areas where further investment in the grid may be most cost-effective, while also supporting the strategic dispatch of crews by mapping blink events, sags, swells, and outage indicators against local conditions such as weather and vegetation-related risk. That means the technology can begin producing reliability and planning value even before the full demand flexibility vision is realized here in the state. With this in mind, we would respectfully request the authority to consider extending the current pilot so that we can operate under a fuller seasonal profile and produce a more complete body of evidence, direct the TrueSense gateway to be evaluated as a utility device under a streamlined pathway for standard utility operations, and consider extending the pilot beyond circuits 2535 and 2536 to gather additional grid visibility in assessing the benefits of future investments across the state of Connecticut. We would also ask that the use of the extended pilot be incorporated into the next integrated distribution system plan alongside United Illuminating, whereby we can develop a Connecticut-specific cost-benefit analysis for broader deployment of this type of technology. We've learned a lot through this pilot. We're honored to have been able to participate alongside 6 other organizations, and we are available to address any questions that may be remaining relative to the information that we've provided to date. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Landa and the Tantalus team and the consortium. I believe Commissioner Cheeseman has a question.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Beecher. Thank you, Mr. Landa, for your presentation. My question revolves around the protracted process of installation. You mentioned Norwich doesn't require permitting, the 74 other utilities don't. How would this be addressed? Is this a question that you mentioned it needs to be classified as a piece of, utility equipment? Is this something that the utilities can do? Is this something that would require specific state level legislation? I know, I think in the last session that bill was passed that would provide for one-stop solar permitting. So how could this be addressed? Because obviously the more obstacles we put in the way of this, the harder it will be to implement these kinds of programs. So I'd be interested in an explanation and suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to provide perspective, and then I'd ask Jonathan Leake and Andrew Mitchell of our team, who live and breathe this every day with an increasing number of utilities, to also contribute to your question. From what we've seen and from our experience of deploying this technology, as well as other smart metering capabilities for the last 35 years, the common path is to partner alongside a utility, allow that utility to assess the technology, and then treat the technology as part of the utility's equipment itself. In those circumstances, similar to what we're witnessing up in Norwich, that obfuscates the need for a permit. In this circumstance, and I think it's a lesson learned not only for Tantalus, but for any of the other programs, cycles within this program, is the technology and the program was selected, our project was selected, but I don't think it afforded United Illuminating the time to actually run its own assessment and testing the TrueSense Gateway in its own labs. And so as a result, it was not treated as utility equipment. When we're putting anything in the field that doesn't fall under the realm of utility equipment, it effectively becomes, as we witnessed in Bridgeport and Fairfield, then incumbent to secure permits from the city. And that's timely, it's costly, and at the end of the day, we've got equipment sitting in the meter sockets out in the field. The UL certification certainly is a necessity for any type of technology being deployed by utilities. And within the state of Connecticut, there are examples of statewide exemptions for projects like what we deployed here. That would similarly eliminate the need for permits on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. With that said, let me see if Jonathan, who is our project manager here in Connecticut, and Andrew Mitchell, who's our solutions engineer and brings over 17 years of personal experience working inside a utility as the head of engineering and operations, see if they have any other incremental commentary towards the question.
If I could, from a utility perspective, just add to that. Once the device falls as a utility device, the utility then takes on the responsibility as if it's a meter or acting like the meter that's already positioned at the house. Therefore, the permits and things are not needed due to the relevancy of what's coming back from the device itself. I fall on what we call the front side of the meter. So when Pete mentions all the blinks and all the different pieces of data that's coming back that are beneficial from a utility perspective, those are the pieces of information that the utility takes control and ownership of when they deploy said device. While we realize this whole project encompassed and incorporated behind the meter aspect with water heaters and things of that nature, after the device is deployed by the utility, it can always become an opportunity later to come back to integrate with a permit for waters or water heaters and plumbing and things of that nature, depending upon what you're wanting to control within the house. So from a deployment perspective, you have to look at it as Pete mentioned, the front side of the meter, and the utility takes the responsibility and ownership, and it simply falls on the utility to maintain right up to that edge of demarcation for ease of deployment, and it becomes about a 25 to 30-minute deployment as we've done at 75 other utilities across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. You do have a pretty radical echo going on there, just at least through my speaker, but that's okay. We could hear you. And of course, these issues are ones that rate regulators look at very carefully in terms of who bears the costs and ultimately, who bears the risk of certain technologies. So yeah, it raises, as do so many grid modernization policies, practices, technologies, raises a lot of interesting questions for us to keep thinking about. But I don't see any other hands. Mr. White, are you ready to ask some questions?
Yeah, I would like that. Thank you. You're asking for an extension. You're asking for an extension of time. How much money? What do you think the cost is? Have you calculated that, estimated it, budgeted it?
Yeah, it'd be nominal, and frankly, the primary expense that TrueSense gateways in the field are leveraging a cellular network. The cost of extending those cellular plans is nominal, that Tantalus would be willing to make the investment into cover. The balance of the technology is deployed in the field, and the continued use of our software and analytics tools is something we similarly would invest, particularly given the presence that we have here in the state of Connecticut. So as it relates to incremental cost, to United Illuminating, PURA, or ratepayers to run through the end of March 2027, effectively nothing out of pocket.
Okay, so a no-cost extension is what you're looking for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's see. You stated in that, or this is in one of your interrogatory responses, UPA 117, the funding mechanism for installation of the TrueSense gateway would be determined by UI subject to PURA approval. In relation to that, can you estimate the lag time between costs being incurred in the first year of deployment and avoiding costs by delaying or avoiding system upgrades? What have you seen in other territories? Or you may not have even gotten to that point yet, because I believe you said that a lot of deployments happened in the past 2 years, but what's your estimate?
I don't know if we can quantify that for you in real time, but one that we certainly can take away and evaluate based on the progress that we're making with other utilities. At a somewhat more subjective than probably quantified response to your question, I can at least point up to the city of Norwich. They've been leveraging a smart metering deployment that we activated for them well over 10 years ago. And the intent is to supplement that existing system with the TrueSense Gateway, not only to bolster the communications network of that existing system, but the TrueSense gateways themselves have meter grade chips embedded inside, as well as the power quality sensing and behind the meter control capabilities. So as that organization and utility and executive team are looking at how to prioritize capital investments over their next 10 years, I think they're looking to leverage the data from the TrueSense Gateway to really prioritize investments as it relates to circuits, lines, feeders, and distribution transformers, with the intent of extending the life of the metering infrastructure as long as possible. It's hard to quantify what that actually means in avoided cost as it relates to metering per se. But maybe Andrew, you can speak to the attributes and benefits that we may be seeing in terms of protecting and extending the life of transformers based on the data that we're capturing.
I'm hoping my volume is a little better.
Yeah, now you're clear.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so what we see when we deploy these devices in the field at our other utilities immediately is the loading aspect on the transformers that you folks drive by on your way to and from work, whether it's up on the pole or the green pad mounts that are out there in the field. But what we're able to capture is the interval data that allows us to see every single interval of data that's coming across almost in real time on those transformers. What that allows us to do at a utility level is to manage the load and make sure the appropriate loads are on those transformers, which in turn allows a transformer to increase its lifespan being properly loaded. Whether that's an optimal load or a little overloaded based on the weather conditions is up to some of the engineers at the utility itself. But that optimization of a transformer and the costs that have dramatically increased post-COVID is something utilities right now are really starting to take advantage of. Just as an example, it's a 5 to 10x cost increase in transformers in just the last few years. Maybe that's not even the right statement. It's over that. Sometimes it's a doubling of costs of transformers. So utilities are hyper aware of, or should be hyper aware of, the load at each transformer to extend that asset life as long as possible. Whereas we didn't used to do that years ago. We let a transformer go to failure. Now that's not so much an option.
Yeah, and I'd add, I think we're also seeing, based on the initial results in the field, is it's not only helping utilities prioritize investment across the distribution grid, but in some circumstances it is justifying also an appropriate time to begin upgrading metering infrastructure. As advanced latest generation meters bring in some additional capability and additional measurement that's beneficial. If we think about a CVR program tied to voltage reduction as an example, the deployment of a TrueSense gateway and load management behind that gateway inside the home can be used to help utilities throttle voltage in emergency circumstances. That's quantifiable in terms of return on investment. Utilities can then extend investment by beginning to upgrade metering infrastructure to improve visibility into voltage at each location or each meter base. Different granularity of visibility, but still being able to really track where the lowest point across the distribution grid is, and behind each transformer, what's the lowest point of voltage. That does have quantifiable value. It varies based on region and state by state, but it's an example of the types of calculations that we are beginning to compile with the utilities that are actively deploying the technology in the field today. So a little bit more subjective to your question. Apologies for that. Certainly can take it away and see if there are some mathematical equations that would validate and add to a cost-benefit analysis.
Thank you for that. I'm hoping this is a quick question. Do you have an estimate of how long it takes to replace a transformer? Let's say it's not sitting in stock, got to order it, get it online.
It depends on the size of transformers.
Sure.
Andrew, do you want to address cycle times and lead times? That's probably the quickest way to answer that question.
Yeah, the lead times have come back down, but still on some of the smaller transformers, depending on the size of the utility, can be anywhere from 10 to 16 to 20 weeks. Larger transformers that run commercial and industrial sites can take up to a year to 2 years still, depending upon, again, the utility and the scale at which they can buy those devices.
And that, just to be clear, is that the purchase time or the installation time?
That's just that's the order time and delivery, and then installation is anywhere from 6 hours to 2 hours, depending on the size of the transformer.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Does the TrueSense gateway require AMI?
It does not. In many circumstances, so of the now over 75 utilities deploying the technology, 2/3 of those utilities are existing customers of Tantalus with an AMI system that we've deployed on their behalf. 1/3 of the utilities did not purchase an AMI system from Tantalus prior to engaging on the TrueSense gateway. So it can complement an AMI system, or it can run independent of the existence of an AMI system.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that you've installed in more than 75 territories across North America. So first of all, that's happened just in the last 2 years, including Norwich. I wasn't clear. You were talking about Norwich doing AMI maybe 10 years ago, but Tantalus, were you down there 10 years ago? Or just in the past 2 years?
Yeah, sorry for the confusion. Over 75 utilities that are spread across 25 states in the US. And we have one utility up in Canada now beginning to deploy the TrueSense gateway as well. That's the territory, 25 states plus one province north of the border. As it relates to the city of Norwich here in Connecticut, we helped that utility and have supported the utility for over a decade by deploying an AMI system. We're not a meter vendor. We partner with the likes of Itron, Landis & Gyr, and Aclara. You can think of us like the Intel inside a meter in terms of edge computing capabilities, communications, networking, data, software, and analytics. But Norwich has had our technology in the field for over a decade. They are now enhancing that investment by deploying the TrueSense gateway.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Lund, if I could jump in. I'm sorry, Tim. So you're the intelligence inside the meter that, is that same intelligence then adaptable? Because you said doesn't necessarily depend on AMI. Is it adaptable to, say, Wi-Fi applications? In other words, non-AMI or other applications?
So a substantial portion of our focus, and I don't know. Let me, if I can bring the slides back up, it might be helpful. Let me do that so I can flip in between a few pictures to try to answer your question, if I may.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, yeah, no. Excuse me. Let me see if this comes across. So I referenced sort of two comments. So we have a suite of solutions that expand from the substation to the meter. And then with the TrueSense gateway and in collaboration with Savant and GE Appliances, demonstrating capabilities behind the meter. The TrueSense gateway has within it a Wi-Fi chip, as well as something referred to as power line communications. And I hope my screen's coming across with the visual on slide 6 of the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. What we've done inside the TrueSense gateway, at actually the direction of 9 utilities that helped design this technology, was create something, a utility grade and a utility only signal, meaning we're not piggybacking on top of consumer Wi-Fi that exists inside a home. That improves security, but it also diversifies program participants in behind the meter programs. As an example, there's a decent percent of folks here in Connecticut and across the US that don't have Wi-Fi in their home. Sometimes that's an economic constraint. Sometimes it's a personal decision. So with the TrueSense Gateway, we've embedded communications capability that not only is sending messages to and from the utilities command center through cellular or fiber network, but also sending a signal through the electric wires, power line communications, or Wi-Fi directly to an appliance inside the home. So in the pilot we deployed here in Connecticut, our device, the TrueSense Gateway, is leveraging power line communications and a utility-grade Wi-Fi signal. So it's utility only, not data streaming for my teenagers, but a direct control to a set of devices. And we've partnered with Savant Energy in the form of smart modules that retrofit into electric panels, thermostats, as well as GE Appliances flex capacity water heater. That distribution or the suite of devices can be expanded to any type of smart appliance. It's not specific to Savant and GE Appliances. It's built to be interoperable. And as we expand our capabilities, we'll expand the suite of partners with smart technology that can be controlled by a utility inside the home, with the intent of making the system as interoperable as possible.
Thank you for that. And I mean, could you see the value at some point of having somebody from the broadband, accessibility community as part of your consortium? Given what you said about the need to have have broader access for.
Yeah, I'm gonna draw your attention to slide 7. So at the bottom of this CAD drawing, you'll see a reference to fiber. The TrueSense Gateway has 3 versions. The one that's being deployed, the network of choice here in Connecticut with United Illuminating was a cellular network. But we also have a fiber version and an Ethernet version of the TrueSense Gateway. And in fact, there are a few Ethernet gateways that are tethered to a cellular modem here in Connecticut. But sorry, some animation there. We are actually partnering with a number of organizations that put a form factor inside our device for utilities like EPB Chattanooga that are actually deploying fiber all the way to the home and delivering broadband services. So the answer to your question is absolutely. And we have a few partners in the broadband space today.
I appreciate that. And I actually should have worded that in terms of, or phrased that in terms of the communications community, because of these intersections, these critical intersections, with the power sector, just like we heard earlier with the transportation sector and the electric vehicles sectors. It's all very much an interconnected world. I wanted to see if Commissioner Smith had a question or anybody else.
Jan, thank you. My video's off. My video's temporarily off. I apologize.
No problem.
I was just curious. So is there any customer adoption issues involved here? If making people do something new or buy something new, and if you need different appliances or you've got to do changes to your home, how does that impact what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, Jonathan, would you like to take the lead on that?
Sure. And, demand flexibility really is nothing new. There are bring your own thermostat programs, other load control programs that utilities have been involved in for quite some time. This is another way to make that available to ratepayers. But some of the challenges that you mention or could envision, do still exist. Customers that don't want to participate, that may opt out of a program or decide not to enroll in a utility offered program. What we've tried to demonstrate here really is multiple different benefits that the TrueSense Gateway can provide. So it does not require adding new smart appliances inside the home. Excuse me. But, really can connect with a variety of devices inside the home.
I think in
go ahead.
if I may supplement, apologies for jumping in there, but as it relates to the project here with United Illuminating, part of the program was providing participants with the free water heater or free thermostat in exchange for opting into the program. We've seen that to be effective in our history of supporting demand management projects for utilities over a few decades. And as we expand and think about advancements in this technology, the interoperability that is inherent in the TrueSense Gateway through the TrueSync software that we've leveraged here can support a multitude of devices and programs, whether that's giving something away for free, providing economic incentive to change behavior, or activating what's referred to as a bring your own program, where devices may already be deployed in the house that we can potentially connect to.
Thanks very much for that elaboration. Commissioner Smith, does that cover it for you?
Very much.
Thanks. Oh, we're good. Okay, very good. Julia.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of quick questions for Tantalus. Thank you so much for being here today, Mr. Londa and Mr. Leek. Do you have any documentation or visual aids that you use with other utilities as a company customers that compares the capabilities of the gateway on its own versus when it's paired with AMI?
Yeah, Julie, I've got to I think we might have to take that one away and come back to you.
Okay.
Nothing that I have available that I could bring up on the screen right now.
Okay.
Most of the visuals and most of the data that we're capturing is tied to the data that we're collecting at the TrueSense Gateway. If that would be of help, we can certainly send across some additional information as it relates specifically to really power quality measurement from the TrueSense Gateway, which is where we're making the most advancements with the technology. But Andrew, Jonathan, any other thoughts on how to address Julia's question?
Well, there are some utilities that are installing the TrueSense Gateway to gain better visibility into power quality across a circuit that does not have AMI, so they're not getting interval voltage data necessarily from their existing meters. We have utility customers today that only have AMI in select areas, for example. And so they have, some good visibility where AMI is deployed, but that's not their entire system. They're able to strategically deploy the TrueSense Gateway in select locations to gain that granular voltage information. It's taking over 15,000 measurements per second and delivering that through software that is AMI agnostic, as well as does not require an existing AMI system. So we absolutely have utilities that are using that, most of which do have, as I mentioned, AMI in some areas, but not necessarily their entire service territory.
If I could just add one quick piece to this, the device itself in the distribution automation world can be thought of as what we call an RTU, a remote terminal unit. You don't have to have an AMI system at all. A utility can deploy this at the end of line of a house, in front of a commercial customer, anywhere they so desire if they have a SCADA system, and can bring back this information from within the TrueSense Gateway and display it in their own SCADA system. So it can act independently from an AMI system or in conjunction with, and you can leverage the two together or one versus the other as you so desire.
Thank you. Those were helpful. And then my last question is, it seems that a number of the barriers to installation would be resolved with a change to qualifying this as a utility device at scale. But was there any effort to track barriers to implementation across the installations to identify particularly issues that might be barriers, even if it was considered a utilities device?
Yeah, so Julia, thanks for the question. The answer is yes. I think we've got a decent list of incremental challenges, some of which tie to arriving at a location and finding the state of the meter socket in disrepair because of age and rust. We've also seen just very quickly some vegetation related elements of proximity of the meter and the meter socket to overgrown landscaping or bushes that led to disqualifying a location. So I think as we think about a programmatic approach, and certainly what we're seeing elsewhere is permitting is the permitting that we went through as part of this project through the electric departments of Bridgeport and Fairfield, very specific. With that said, I think we'd have to partner with the EDCs here in the state to really think through how we navigate around legacy, very old meter sockets, as an example, loose neutrals, which are a fire risk existing potentially in some circumstances that we can help mitigate, and then how to address vegetation management where plants have just grown over or even into meter sockets. Jonathan, anything beyond those two? I'm sensitive to time that we're consuming, but anything else you can think of? We certainly, Julia, can send you a list of locations that got disqualified and the reasons why.
But yes, Julia, we do have notes as to barriers for those that we were not able to proceed. Thank you.
I think that'd be helpful. Julia, does that cover it for you?
Yes, Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Crowley, are you available to offer some comments?
Yeah, sure am. I'm gonna bring up my presentation. I don't know if we'll be going through it. I think Tantalus, the team kind of covered a lot of, what we were planning on discussing. Again, just, issues with, customer acquisition, the hardware installation, concerns that we ran into, but ultimately, I think as mentioned, just to reiterate, with the front of the meter device, we did, appreciate the visibility, into, grid activity and circle level analytics. I think it provided some good information, to the group internally, like our operations teams, and similar with like behind the meter. I know we didn't get, a ton of, activity with that. But, as Pete mentioned, we proved that the hardware works, the communication links, were successful, and at a, longer, or larger, pilot, should be able to, get, some better visibility into the impact that would have, on the UI grid. Gonna bring up some notes that I have here. But ultimately, I think like the big issue, that we did run into was just the installation of the hardware itself. I know there's been a bunch of discussion about if it was utility owned, we might be able to get, around, like the permitting, things of that nature. And I think, what Pete and Jonathan were kind of talking about more recently, about other hiccups that we run into. They're very similar issues we run into with the Shield and Connect program, which for those who aren't familiar is essentially another meter collar that is utility owned, and it allows residential customers to plug in their generators to that meter collar if they lose power. Acts as a meter-based like switching device essentially. But we do run into the same type of issues with those where, they might have a bush that is growing too close to the meter, so we do not have the clearance to add, that meter color there. It's then up to the customer to resolve that issue. There's billing, we have to make sure that they, are up to date with their billing. I know for one of the Tantalus installs, there was an issue where there just wasn't enough clearance. It was going to push the meter. I think it was like closer into the driveway. So potentially, an issue with people walking into it, or, cars, potentially hitting it because of the added, couple of inches. So there's always going to be situations that like do prevent us, from installing, devices. And those are probably more anecdotal and not the majority of the issues. I will mention that, but did want to, put that out there. And I know and I don't know the specifics around it. It occurred before I joined the company. But with that Shield and Connect program, there was an exception from the state electrical inspector that was given, to UI to prevent us from having to get like local permitting, for that. I would assume, at scale, something similar would have to occur. Again, don't know the details behind that, or how that was pushed forward, but that does prevent us from having to go get permitting for those Shield and Connect installs. But yeah, ultimately, I think, the data that we were able to get is valuable. We would prefer if it were not a meter-based, hardware that was collecting that data. And we do have a cycle 3 pilot that is collecting not exactly the same, but some similar data that we're testing now, cycle 3 for IAS. And then, I think, before we can make really any decisions on the demand flexibility perspective, we would really need to see like a larger participant pool, some more dispatches, really kind of take a look at what the impact on that is, and then how that might interplay with, our existing, programs such as the smart thermostat program. If there's any interplay between the two that could occur.
Okay, does that cover it for you?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe Molly has some questions though for the EDCs.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. You might have answered this a bit in your presentation just now, but was wondering if you could comment on the recommendation to extend the pilot through March 2027 at no cost. Would UI support an extension? And then just comment on what level of effort from UI and potential administrative costs would be involved.
Yeah, I can't speak right now about the administrative costs that would have to be involved. From an operations perspective, there could be some just for, taking the data and, reviewing it and processing it, and any actions that may come out of that. And then I think, just in terms of the, demand flexibility piece, I think we'd have to probably take a look at how many units are out there, and if we could get enough data, and I think that's a discussion between Tantalus, UI, and Pura to kind of determine if there's enough out there that we are confident we'd be able to get enough data to make an educated decision on this, or if more installations would have to occur, and if so, where, how to go about those, and what the cost of the additional installations would have to be.
Understood, thank you. And then if the pilot was extended for that additional period, would Tantalus and UI submit additional data and lessons learned after that period?
I think we would have to, yeah. I think, an additional couple of months, of data would provide more information and, some more informed learnings for us, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then just referring to your slide here, so you mentioned that you recommend further investigation into alternative devices that can provide the data offered by the TrueSense Gateway. So I'm just curious what alternatives UI has investigated, and what are the findings of that?
Yeah, it's probably not exactly like a one-to-one, comparison, but we're working with a company called Edge Zero, who is a Cycle 3 IAS innovator. So we have not yet installed their hardware, but that is, essentially a grid monitoring solution that we're piloting through IAS. So hopefully expect, I believe, to get some of those installed in the next couple of weeks, and then we can, kind of start looking at the data, from that program.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't see this on your slides, but I believe the response to UPA 99 in this docket, UI had stated that the visibility provided by the TrueSense Gateway is largely duplicative of the capabilities that are already available with AMI. So I'm just wondering if that's still the company's position, and if that is the case, whether UI currently uses AMI data to look at any of the analytics that are listed on this slide.
Yeah, I know, we do currently have AMI, and that's something, we have continued to, discuss internally is, with that data, what can we do? How can we get actionable, insights out of it? It's a continued discussion, that we have. And I think that was one of the, items from the Tantalus pilots, that was attractive to us, was not only providing that data in a digestible manner, but also, helping us, gain insights that we can then take action out of. So as of now, still kind of exploring that internally, what we can and cannot get out of our existing AMI. We know AMI can give us a lot of similar information, but kind of relying on some of these pilots, Analysts, Edge Zero, mentioned another one, Grid Sites, another Cycle 3, where it's just taking that data from us and providing us with some actionable insights. That's the pieces that we're interested in.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me. So back to you, Commissioner Beecher. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll toss it back to, well, Julia, I see your hands up. I'll have you ask your question now.
Thank you. I don't know if Eversource is planning to present at any point. So can I just address any utility questions now? Is that preferred?
We are going to hear from Eversource. We'll hear a quick review from the program administrator about Tantalus. Then I think we'll hear from Eversource and any additional comments from UI before we go to our wrap up. So wherever you'd like to jump in.
Okay. I think these probably should be quick. One question to UI is, do you have a recommended proceeding where you would recommend for any further investigation or evaluation of these types of, devices that are considered alternative to TrueSense Gateway?
I don't off the top of my head. I'd probably have to reach out to our operations group just to kind of get a feel from them. Where this would belong, and probably our regulatory group. So we can have those discussions and follow up as needed.
Okay, and I can hold my other question for Eversource.
Okay, that sounds good. Tim, are you set for now, or did you have a quick follow-up, or?
No, I think I'm good. I'm happy to move on.
Okay, so should we go to the
program administrator?
The program administrator for their overview? Yep.
Yeah, I would like that if they come up.
There we go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you again. So to get started, the Tantalus project combined two approaches. In the front of the meter, Tantalus installed its TrueSense Gateway devices as meter collars for grid monitoring. And then behind the meter, it added smart thermostats, water heaters, and load control devices to test demand flexibility. As noted by Tantalus, the project drew on several partners, including National Laboratory of the Rockies, UConn, and Opinion Dynamics. The project was deployed in and disadvantaged community in Bridgeport, and later expanded into Fairfield to reach additional participants. And all the hardware for the project was provided to customers at no cost of theirs in this deployment. In our review of Tantalus's deployment, Tantalus scored 64%, supported by the project's focus on economic development and underserved communities. In particular, the project reached underserved communities in 87% of its participating households. But the project was affected by a cost-effectiveness score of near zero due to challenges in project installation and a conservative projection of its expected useful life of the gateway hardware. Tantalus received 3 modifications to its project over the course of deployment. The first to increase its project budget for reflecting additional hardware costs and analysis needs, and then the other modifications to extend its deployment to a total of 24 months. The challenges that Tantalus faced in this deployment are where we find the lessons learned for the project. The most consequential of which is that UI determined that the TrueSense gateway would be a customer-owned device rather than a utility asset. This classification meant that every installation required customer permission and local permitting, which cascaded into the timeline, budget, and scale of deployment. On the front of meter side, Tantalus installed about 53 gateways against a proposed 200. And on the behind of meter side, installed 8 at 8 locations against a planned 100. This reduction of scope occurred in part because Tantalus faced significant challenges in identifying eligible housing in the project's deployment, where Tantalus faced high shares of renters, multifamily buildings, and gas heating that limited the use of the gateway hardware. As a result of these challenges, Tantalus's project data was only able to cover a portion of the hardware's capabilities, and the challenges in customer recruitment limited the data collection to cover only the winter months. So, for example, summer air conditioning flexibility was not tested in deployment. Through these deployment challenges, Tantalus's monitoring delivered limited but clear results. The gateways themselves gave continuous high-frequency visibility into the grid and captured about 5,800 minutes of recorded outage time. The demand flexibility results demonstrated about 320 kilowatt hours of electric savings, plus some avoided gas usage, to a total of 1,094 kilograms of avoided CO2. And this all led to a bill impact of about $135 across the participants that used smart thermostats, or roughly $27 per participant. The program administrator does not recommend scaling this project in its current form, and instead we recommended that the authority direct UI to include grid monitoring information in its next IDSP, Integrated Distribution System Plan, and to also consider a cost-benefit analysis of the different approaches to improving visibility, including via this gateway. Regarding Tantalus's new proposal today to continue its current project deployment, the program administrator has no objections to a no-cost extension to this project. If an extension is under consideration, we would request direction from PIRA on how to proceed, including the need for any SFA extensions and the program administrator's responsibilities regarding oversight, monitoring, reporting, and evaluation of the extended project. If Tantalus is to be considered under other PIRA proceedings, we recommend that any future evaluation treat Tantalus devices as utility assets, comparable to advanced metering, rather than as customer-owned equipment. And we see these changes would do the most to improve the project's economics and deployment timelines. Thank you. Available for questions.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I think what we'd like to do is we'd like to hear from Eversource next. And because we're going to move into lessons learned. So we'd like to hear from Eversource. And then if UI wants to add any additional comments, Mr. Crowley, you can do that. And then we'll go back to our program administrator for sort of a final wrap up. So welcome, Ms. Gallant.
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to just share our screen. Our presentation will be fairly brief, so I can hopefully help get us back on time here. But thank you all. You can go to the next slide here. So we just really wanted to talk about some of the benefits that we've seen of implementing some of these pilots with a single utility versus having them be a joint utility scaled. So some of the three things that we've seen is cost efficiency. Implementing this with one pilot or with one utility versus two utilities can save a lot of implementation and administrative costs. It can also be more focused. So some utility like specific capabilities are only available. AMI metering, for instance, is currently available with UI. So pilots that need AMI metering are best suited to work specifically with UI. Also like DER sites and other things like that that would be more beneficial for a single pilot or for a single utility. The third thing is also targeted communities. So if they're looking at Grid Edge, for instance, worked in the North Haven area, that is a UI territory, it would make sense for this pilot to continue working with just UI. You can go to the next slide. So looking ahead, there can definitely be value in selecting a single utility for implementation based on the objectives of the pilots. These pilots and other single utility pilots that we worked with have shown that this approach may continue to make sense to evaluate emerging technologies using those utility-specific capabilities, like I had mentioned, serving targeted communities, and keeping pilot costs lower due to reduced stakeholder oversight and those reduced implementation costs. They can also help test possible new customer engagement approaches before a wider deployment to both utilities. And future pilots may benefit from this approach. It should definitely be considered for future program design as we look at future cycles of this program. So that's it. Like I said, very short and sweet, but we're definitely open to questions.
Okay, and what we'll do to combine our questioning of the utilities, if I stick around, Mr. Crowley, did you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Rudy, I don't have a presentation on this piece of it, but, I think it's important just to, to mention like UI's perspective, with the IES program, even with the pilots that, it's decided not to scale, we have learned a lot of information, about, our grid, about the technologies that are out there. And I make the joke even with, Kraken, that was a pilot that, we had a technical meeting on in February, just kind of like learning, how they go about marketing things. It's good information for us to have, kind of gets us out of our comfort zone to continue doing this. But for those, pilots that like we do decide to scale, or move forward with, I think the conversation that we've been having with, especially with each of the three today, the question that keeps coming up is like, what docket should we continue doing this under? And I think that's the right question to be asked. And sorry, I don't have the answer every single time, but, I think it's important to find the home for these if we're going to continue to do, any type of extensions, any type of continued research, now that we have the initial findings, put them where they belong, and continue those investigations. And also kind of help us take a look at it from like, a technology or vendor agnostic perspective. We still want to go through the process of seeing who the right vendor is for, this type of solution. We can prove that a technology works. We can prove that a, customer base is interested in this type of solution if it's customer facing, but still, give the EDCs the ability to go out there, do their purchasing processes, and identify the very best, provider for each type of solution for those that are decided to scale. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there, kind of echoes what we have in our final reports, but I think, just an important piece to continue noting. So appreciate it. And thanks everybody.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Commissioner. Question for UI. So Tantalus suggested that the TrueSense gateway is treated differently by UI than basically the rest of the continent or the rest of the country, in that it has to go through additional, rules. Has UI considered revisiting that? Is there any opportunity for UI to change that? Is it a UI internal decision to make it that way? Is it based on pure direction, laws? Just curious if you could speak to that. What makes us different here in Connecticut than the rest of the country?
Yeah, I think at a high level, it kind of boils down to, like I mentioned with Shield and Connect, like we would still need permitting, for installing those meter collars if we didn't have the state exception. So I think there's a legislative aspect of it. We did go through, we tested these in our meter, test center, to make sure, put them through all of our stress tests. So we went through the steps that we would be doing for any piece of equipment that we would be putting out there. I don't know exactly the decision why we didn't treat it as UI owned, but at the end of the day, the inspection aspect and the permit aspect would still be needed unless we got that, state exclusion, for that. And I think that was something that we discussed early on, within the first, 6 months or so of the project when we started meeting with the electrical inspectors. Just how would we go about getting that? And if we had enough time within the 18 months, pilot limitation, to actually get that exclusion or not. So I think that's like the biggest holdup that we had was just not having that exclusion. So it didn't really make sense to treat the units any other way. Why that's different in the state of Connecticut than elsewhere, I do not know, but yeah, that's what my metering team was telling me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All set?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And I think we'll now loop back to the program administrator for their final remarks. I believe Ms. Durkay.
Yes, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Durkay, and I'm with the Current Energy Group, who, as my colleague noted, serves as the program administrator for the IES program. And we'd wish to provide some additional perspectives on both program lessons learned and reflections on the Cycle 1 theme of demand-side flexibility. Both of these are items discussed in our addendum report filed in April this year, and there's additional detail provided there. If you could please go to the next slide, I'll begin with Cycle 1 learnings on a program level. As the authority and others are aware, we're in the process of concluding the inaugural IES program cycle, and Cycle 1 afforded the program administrator many opportunities to learn and improve. This was both on account of implementing the IES program design document and responding to a number of real-world challenges associated with deployment. We understand there is an expressed intent to further evaluate the program, potentially through a review docket. And so while we don't intend to preclude any such review, we were interested in providing some comments and reflections now, as well as acknowledge where or how we've made certain adjustments based on our experiences in Cycle 1. And so we've grouped these lessons into 3 categories, the first of which is deployment. This included a series of learnings related to the Standard Form Agreement, or SFA, process. This began with the development of an SFA modification process and then testing that process against the realities of project deployments. Specifically, this resulted in recognizing that SFAs and project milestones need to be sufficiently detailed, clear, and specific to ensure that both cost recovery and ensure that cost recovery is tied to project deployments, as well as ensuring there's sufficient time on the front end for SFA negotiation and execution. As a result, the program administration team has made a number of improvements related to SFAs and has identified additional opportunities for improvement, as noted in the report. An additional learning here was the challenges associated with an 18-month deployment process. Some of the innovators have spoken to this today, but I would highlight that all 7 innovators have expressed some aspect of challenge with the time frame for the deployment period. And that is due to the number of activities associated with deployment, including but not limited to project launch and coordination, marketing and recruitment, deployment and operation, and collecting and analyzing performance data, especially if data collection were to include both a winter and a summer season. If you'll proceed to the next slide, the second category of learnings is around assessment and scaling, or the phase 4 process, where we currently are for this cycle. We identified a number of lessons learned that are captured in the report about the guidance provided to innovators regarding the final report and data submissions, the application of certain cost-benefit assessment and project scoring criteria, and additionally, the project administration team is also reflecting on improvements that can be made to the report development process itself and substance. The first final report from a Cycle 2 innovator was filed yesterday, initiating the assessment and scaling process for one Cycle 2 project. And in anticipation of that, we have been making minor modifications to the phase 4 process that we believe are within the authority and scope of the program administrator's role. And concurrently, we're waiting on additional feedback or direction from the authority regarding a motion for cycles to schedules and deadlines broadly. And given that, we do still welcome a broader examination of the evaluation process through a more thorough program review, but recognize there are already some opportunities to implement changes. On the next slide, you'll be able to see the final category of program learnings, including more comprehensive reflections. The first is greater attention earlier in the process to potential regulatory barriers that may require a temporary exception. The discussion around treatment of the Tantalus Gateway is one example of this, and another is a tariff-based approach that another Cycle 1 innovator initially sought to employ and had to modify. So we are being particularly attentive to these considerations with regard to future cycles, especially Cycle 4. And other learnings and reflections include earlier and greater integration between innovators and relevant EDC teams, which has been improved in subsequent cycles, and reflections on various pathways, including collaborative projects, and then observations around some of the more unique barriers that are attributable to an initial program cycle. The final slide I have, the next one, is around broader reflections on the Cycle 1 theme of demand-side flexibility. For purposes of this cycle, the authority defined demand-side flexibility as the ability to shift or reduce electricity demand or consumption relative to a device's normal electricity profile, enabling load control and optimization to balance the electricity system. While projects were not constrained to this theme, all 7 projects provided applicable learnings as it relates to this topic. Some of those are listed here that I will speak to. One is how different distributed energy resources, or DERs, and customer segments exhibited greater flexibility than others during this cycle. To some degree, this was correlated with technological maturity. For example, light-duty EVs and commercial buildings yielded greater energy savings or capacity savings results in the program than more nascent market areas, such as heat pumps or medium and heavy-duty EVs. Another learning is that several projects in this cycle either demonstrated focused distributed energy resource management system, or DERMS, opportunities or capabilities, which has been discussed today and also in the prior technical conference. Several projects stated they could be further enhanced. Their results or their impact could be further enhanced through DERMS deployment. Another learning is that price signals for demand response were oriented to the system or ISO New England peak. However, 5 of the 7 Cycle 1 innovators indicated that their deployments could have provided additional benefits or value at the distribution level, and in some cases could not quantify this due to challenges with data or distribution system level visibility challenges. And as was noted earlier today, one project was limited to capturing additional benefits or value streams due at least in part to the presence of another on-site DER, specifically solar, and its compensation contract. So further investigation could determine whether and how future projects can identify and capture value streams at both the distribution and the system level. At least 3 innovators observed that inconsistent protocols or standards impacted scalability, especially with regard to more nascent technologies or applications, and Grid Edge Networks spoke to this in greater detail today. And an additional observation I'd have is that while subsequent cycles have different themes, there are several projects from cycles 2 and 3 that may contribute to further demand-side flexibility learnings, some of which were referenced today. And then I would also provide a caveat that there have been some limitations to the lessons learned that are generally attributable to smaller sample sizes, more limited data collection periods, reliance on winter or spring grid conditions as a full proxy for system measurement, and then limited locational data or pricing information, as well as some reliance on qualitative findings. However, at the conclusion of this first cycle, there is an opportunity for Connecticut as a state and the specific relevant agencies within its jurisdiction to revisit the current portfolio of demand response and demand-side flexibility programs and incentives. And this includes identifying technologies and customer segments with untapped demand flexibility opportunities, cost-effective approaches to acquiring demand response and flexibility, administrative efficiencies that could result from a more technology-neutral approach to demand-side flexibility, and a means to ensure innovative strategies for demand-side flexibilities are tested and integrated into the state's existing demand response portfolio. And I recognize we are running long, but I did have one concluding comment around this as well, which is beyond recognizing that demand-side flexibility remains a compelling opportunity to realize the equitable modern grid framework objectives. We strongly wanted to emphasize that all Cycle 1 projects provided valuable lessons learned for this cycle, for IES, as well as other proceedings and efforts by PURA. And there are many successes to celebrate and reflect on, and we wish to take a moment to appreciate the efforts and hard work of all Cycle 1 innovators, the authority, including the commissioners and decisional staff, for their engagement and commitment to this program, the authority's non-decisional staff for their dedication and success to the program, the EDC partners for their support and facilitation of all projects, the IAC members for their contributions, especially during Phase 1 and Phase 2, and in particular to the past and present IAC co-chairs for their support in the development of the program administrator's report. And then finally, we wish to thank all stakeholders for their effort and ongoing support of this program. We're available for questions if you have any regarding this.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I'll just add to your list that we appreciate you and the effort that you've put in on behalf of PURA to help us as by serving as program administrator. So I think you did a good job acknowledging all the folks involved in this effort and this initiative and how important that is. Commissioners, do you have any last questions? Think we're okay.
None here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Cheeseman. And let's see, Commissioner Arconti, I think he's good too. So anything else from the Pura team at this point? I know they will be probably following up, so be prepared for that. We always have more questions. That's one thing about us. So I think I'm seeing Mr. White smile, so I think he's happy with today's program. I hope so. So I'll just have a couple last comments. Again, I'll just add my additional thanks for everybody's participation and work on this initiative. I am sorry for going over. This is called regulatory time, in case you're not familiar, but I think actually everybody participating today is probably familiar with that concept. So as we wrap up today's meeting, I think we've covered everything but I did not ask if any members of the public that might be online today had any questions. I am not seeing anything, but if everybody else could scan for me, I want to make sure if there's any members of the public that wanted to offer comment that they would have that opportunity. Looks like we're okay for now. So I'll just go over a few logistics before we close. Are there any administrative matters that any participants would need to raise at this time? We always like to ask that. All right, seeing none. Second, for everyone's awareness, the proposed and final decisions are expected this fall. Please keep in mind that the schedule for this proceeding, as with all proceedings, is posted but subject to change, and any changes will be announced through the docket system. And then finally, our immediate next step here is to direct a request for written comments to GridEdge, SGS, and Tantalus. That will be posted later. The plan is to post that later today, and the deadline for responses is July 30th. This afternoon, we'll post that request for comments to all of the innovators. So with that, I think we one last thanks. We'll give one last thanks to everybody participating in today's meeting. We are adjourned.